Hey, are you ever going to start this podcast you've been talking about for like forever?
Do you think that anyone will actually want to listen to something like this?
What is your plan for an introduction?
Are you sure you want to talk about these topics? People usually disagree.
3 hours? Are you crazy?
Do you think you're some kind of expert or something?
Are you planning to have an intro song?
What if a bunch of people get really mad and hate you over this?
Do you even know how to make a podcast?
Are you just doing this because you like to argue with people?
Don't let this be just one more thing that you talk about doing, but never actually do.
Wouldn't it be better to do just one episode for each topic?
Stop trying to change people's opinions. Just live your own life.
Dude, people are never gonna agree. Just let it go.
Is this going to be a long intro? Because if it is, I'm bored already.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Why Can't We Talk About That podcast. It makes me happy that you're here. Okay, so my wife loves coffee, like really loves coffee, and I really just can't understand it. I realize that I'm the outlier here. I know that most people love coffee. I just don't understand how something that tastes that bitter and disgusting can be so loved by so many. There are a few of the foo-foo coffee drinks that I can handle for just a second, right up until that coffee flavor creeps in there. Because really, all the foo-foo drinks are doing is masking the taste of the coffee. I know that many of you just drink coffee black, and for you I have a lot of respect. I'm amazed that you could purposely put that garbage in your mouth and keep a straight face the whole time, even pretending that you actually like it. My biggest problem with coffee, though, is this. How can something that smells so wonderful taste so bad? How can one of the greatest smells in the history of the universe become one of the worst flavors of all time simply by grinding it down and passing hot water through it? It makes no sense. I can walk down the coffee bean aisle at the grocery store and feel like I am walking through the streets of heaven. I can smell it from 4 aisles away. Heavenly. But how is it that the only beverage served in hell is made from that exact same heavenly bean? Please keep in mind, I am not attempting to make fun of anyone who likes to drink coffee. It's simply a byproduct of the truth. Today my guest is Luis Valdez, although many call him Phil or Philly. You will get to hear the reasons for this as you listen through. This is the first episode I have ever done where I literally knew nothing about my guest, other than his name, before we sat down together. I didn't know where he worked, what he looked like, how old he was, or if he was an axe murderer. Thankfully for me, he turned out to be a really good dude, and also thankfully for me, I am still alive. He didn't even bring an axe with him. Luis is much younger than I am, yet he has many important thoughts on the ways of the world. He is a critical thinker, which, let's be honest, is something that is lacking with many among his age group. Topics discussed today: nicknames, Neverland, the Dodgers-Giants rivalry, karaoke, Johnny Cash, Taylor Swift, fentanyl, homelessness, exploding houses, 311, Sugar Ray, the Beatles, Rick Rubin, talent versus practice, Outliers, Nirvana, Beck, George Strait, Boomerang, the movie, not the Australian sport toy, working in the cannabis industry, tax cuts, border security, accountability, drug addiction, the two-party system, the economy, interest rates, Roman Catholicism, taking the Lord's name in vain, questioning the Bible, miracles, heaven, hell, purgatory, and military property. Enjoy the conversation. All right, man. Well, this will be fun. I know you not at all.
Not at all.
I think this is the first time I've ever had somebody who I literally didn't even know what you look like till you got here. Other people I've done like remote ones where it's like I kind of see them on Facebook or they're like a friend of a friend kind of thing. And I've met them for the first time through this, but I at least had some. Like I know nothing about you. I know
nothing, and
I know. Yeah,
I know very little about you other
right.
than that you're the Silva's family friend.
Right.
That you grew up with Pat.
I did.
Which I heard that on Brian's episode.
Since junior high. Yeah,
that's really cool, man.
Junior high. Yeah, and I've known Jen since high school. I was there when they first met. Yeah, she started working at a restaurant that me and Pat worked at, and there was definitely already chemistry between the two of them, even way back then, and they were both kids, But Yeah, so yeah, that's basically what I know about you. I know your wife or fiance.
Fiance. Yeah,
So I know Camille a little bit. Even her, I don't know very well because we don't. She does Lovies and I do Ricky's, so I bump into her occasionally, but not very often. And the one thing that I do know is that Brighton calls you Phil.
Yeah.
Which that's what I was expecting when I had asked Camille. I said, "Well, yeah, send me his contact information. I'll get a hold of him." And she sends it in. It's like, is it Louis or Luis?
Either way.
Okay, so she likes Luis, and I was like, "Wait a minute, I thought, because you're Noah's brother, right?"
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I thought Noah's brother's name was Phil, and he was the one that was gonna get married to Camille. So I was all confused, But then I asked Brighton. He's like, "No, that's not his real name. We just call him that." And I'm like, "Okay."
It's just random, yeah. It's the most random story. Essentially, someone's driver's license came to my father's residence at the time I was still living with my parents. Mm-hmm. And my dad actually knew the guy, so he was kind of weirded out that it was sent to our address.
Okay.
And it was a very particular, interesting name. It was Philemon.
Philemon.
Philemon, yeah.
Like that's a Bible name.
I suppose so, yeah.
That's a book in the Bible. Philemon is how they pronounce it, yeah.
It was spelled F-I...
Oh, with an F.
Yeah, it was an F.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, Brighton was spending the night at our parents' house that day. Uh-huh. We have a couple other friends over there. And they started calling me that. They were messing around and they were like, "Yeah, you kind of look like this guy, like Philemon." They were looking at the ID, and they showed my parents, my mom and my dad. My dad's just like, "What the heck? What is this doing here?" And they just tossed it in the trash. And ever since then, that
just became your nickname.
Random story, but yeah, it became my nickname.
Now, does Noah call you that too, or just Brighton and some of those others?
Everyone calls me that.
Everyone calls you that.
Matter of fact, Brighton from time to time goes "I forget your name's Luis." I'm like, "Yeah, well, because you've been calling me Phil or Philly for years now."
Oh man!
And when he introduces me to people that are in his family friends, he's like, "Oh yeah, that's Phil right there." So,
and you're like, "Okay," so you just go with it or what?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I've had a lot of nicknames in high school.
Okay.
In my culture too, there's ways to shorten like Louise or Jose. There's nicknames. So
yeah.
It's
which I never understood. Some of the some of the ones in English are that way too. I never understood how you got Bob out of Robert, right? Because it doesn't start with a B.
Yeah.
But with the Hispanic culture, there's I think it's Poncho is for Francisco,
yep.
which I never got. What was another one? Chewy for Jesus.
Yep.
I don't know where that comes from. It doesn't even sound like the full name.
And
right?
I don't either. I think I question my grandparents a lot on that, or I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Just language, so linguistics. So I grew up only speaking Spanish.
Okay.
From the time I was in kindergarten, maybe to the first grade.
Okay.
I took speech. And they kind of got it out of me.
Okay.
So now my Spanish is more broken, and I kind of got back to it.
So now English is more.
Oh yeah,
a better language.
It's
for
my
you.
primary language.
Okay.
And now it's Spanish is
Yeah.
I understand what people are saying. When I'm responding though, they know it's broken.
Right.
But it works good enough.
And your parents, do they still speak fluent, or do they speak English at all? Or?
Yeah, they speak fluent on both sides.
Both sides. Okay.
So I'm second generation.
Okay.
So. Okay. My parents were first generation American, and then my grandparents are straight from Mexico.
Oh wow! Okay.
But the whole why is it that when you get your brain switched in terms of I'm gonna reciprocate everything I've learned and learn this way with English.
Right.
I mean, Spanish is the complete opposite.
Man!
In terms of the way the sentence structure works and
people that are bilingual are heroes to me. I can't even fathom. I can barely speak English. And the people that are bilingual, trilingual, multi, these people that know 5 or 6 languages fluently. I'm how do you not mix them all together when you're trying to talk to somebody? But they don't. They just get in the zone. Okay, now I'm speaking German. Boom, I'm in German, and now or Germany, I'm talking to German people, and I'm using. It's I can't even fathom that. It's just amazing.
And I suppose their brains are rewired, or they were born different. I don't know if it's.
I don't know. It's special people. That's all I know.
It's pretty admirable. I mean, I like that those people are able to relate to the culture more that way.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean so this is the early 2000s, and that's the way that the school system was. And now in 2023, I think it's a lot different for sure.
Yeah.
I know that Rigetti has 3 different languages. correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's
like that are fluent on campus, you mean?
Or that they teach.
Oh, so that they teach. Well, when I was there, you could do Spanish or French. I don't know if they've added more than that now, because I graduated in '96, so it's been a million years since I've been over there. But
okay,
is that where you went to school? Is Rigetti?
No. Actually, my father went there.
Oh, really?
And he graduated in '98.
Oh, what's his name?
Same name, Luis Valdez.
Luis Valdez. Yeah. Dude, I wonder if I saw his picture. I bet you I recognize him.
You probably would.
So he would have been a sophomore when I graduated then.
Yep.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Pat also was the same graduating class?
Pat was 1 year younger. I think Pat was 97.
Okay.
So yeah, because when I first met Pat, I was in 8th grade at Lakeview, and he was a 7th grader. We had shop class together. That's my first earliest remembrance of him. And it wasn't like we weren't really friends then. We knew each other, but then it was like then we started working together at the pizza place, at a different pizza place, the same one where Jen worked at for a time. And then he left there to go work at Neverland, and then he ended up getting me a job out there. So then I think probably when we worked at the pizza place in Neverland, that's where we became closer friends, because we were working together all the time, So
yeah. And he always tells me stories about that. Like when I ask him, he freely tells me, and I'm like, man, that's such a different experience that most people can say
Neverland?
Growing up. Yeah, just growing up that young too.
Oh yeah,
it's we went to Michael Jackson's ranch and worked there. Like saying it like it's nothing, to me, like, that's super cool. Like even for me.
Oh yeah. And I remember the first time that because I've been working out there a while. We hadn't had any really big things or anything. It was just kind of maintenance and stuff, and because Michael wasn't home at the time because he was gone a lot, and I had heard that he was home, but I hadn't seen him or anything. I'd never seen him in person, and they had this little train that they drive around the whole property, and that was one of my jobs when I first got out there. And we just cruise. When he's home, he likes the trains going around, even though nobody's using them. So I'm just driving around or whatever. And I'm coming through the amusement park, and Pat's standing out there, and I start to slow down because usually I'd stop and I talk to him, and he's going, and I'm going, what? He's like, and I was like he looked like he will keep the train going. I was like, oh, okay. And then I turn around and I look, and Michael's standing right there with his kids, and I was like, oh, that's why you want me to keep the train going. Okay, here we go.
That was the signal right there. Huh?
Yeah, and I was like, oh, dang, that was like, yeah. So it was but working out there was, there's a lot of really cool stories, and it was like you said. I mean, how many people on the planet can say that they've done that?
Not a lot.
Maybe 100, maybe. If even that, if you count all the security guards and but then you even think the fact me and Pat worked in the amusement park. So, I mean, there's got to be maybe 10, 15 people total in the history of that ranch, the people that worked at the amusement park, maybe. I don't even know. But, yeah, it was a blast. So, so are you local to the area? Did you grow up in this area then?
Yeah, okay. I did. So, my father, my grandfather for that matter, we're all from the Central Coast.
Okay.
We've only been in this area our whole lives. My grandfather initially immigrated from Mexico.
Okay.
In the 60s. So my great-grandfather came 20 years before that through the Bracero program. So that was like during World War II when they needed more labor over here. So they made an agreement with Mexico to legally bring him over here.
Okay.
Yeah, he became a naturalized legal citizen.
Nice.
And then brought my grandpa over with a green card. Same thing, naturalized legal citizen.
Okay.
And he's been living in Guadalupe since 85.
Nice.
And my dad was born in 1980.
Okay.
So he's been in Guadalupe his whole life.
Okay.
I lived there up until COVID, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then I moved in with Camille.
Okay.
And so this is all I know. The Central Coast is all I know.
Yeah, me too. I was born and raised here. I lived in San Diego for 8 months. And all the rest of my life I've been right here in Santa Maria.
And how did you like San Diego?
I loved it when we were there. I mean, it was. We didn't live in like downtown. We lived in a place called Ramona, which is like a kind of a farmer town up on a hill.
Okay.
But we'd go down into downtown all the time or different places down there. So I really like San Diego. As with all big cities, it's getting to the point where it's like, all these big cities I loved, like San Francisco. I used to love going there. Portland, Oregon, used to love that. Seattle, Washington, all these big cities. And the last couple times I've been through there, it's like, I don't even want, like, my cousin lives near Portland. He lives in Washington State, but he's about a 20-minute drive from Portland. Mm-hmm. And this last time I was there back in April, we took a day and went out there and walked around. It was just me and him. We didn't have the kids with us. And I'm really glad about that because of some of the things we saw and happen. And like you hear about, people using on the bathroom on the streets and stuff. We actually saw a guy doing that.
Like San Francisco,
We literally saw a guy drop his pants and crap right there on the sidewalk.
That's crazy.
I was like right there in front of everybody. I was like, dude, this is insane. So it's just a bummer because I love big cities. But San Diego, I mean, I haven't been downtown San Diego in a few years now. I don't know. I don't know if that's gotten really bad or not, but we love San Diego.
I feel like that's like the overall sentiment from most people that I hear, and regardless of the generation, too. I always ask people, I'm like, oh, like, was this decade or this era better?
Mm-hmm.
And the sentiment is like, yeah, it was. Yeah. And even if you ask me, which I was born in 98,
mm-hmm.
so I'm like that cutoff or that in-between from the cutoff of millennial, which is like 96, to Gen Z, so I consider Gen Z.
Right.
I'm like, well, even when I grew up, like, things were different than now. I have a sister that's 13 years younger than me.
Oh, wow.
I'm 25.
Okay.
So that's a big age gap.
That is. So she's 12 right now?
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's even growing up in a different time than I did.
Okay.
And I find that interesting, like, just from that perspective of, like, oh, like, even going to a big city isn't the same as what it used to be.
Right, exactly.
Because I have the same memories that you have. Like,
yeah.
I'm sure at that point when I was going to San Francisco, like, in the early... or right after the recession, so 2009, 2010,
mm-hmm.
There was definitely tough times, but I still had an affinity for it, and I still loved going.
Right.
But now it's just like, I literally don't want to go.
Yeah.
Other than Camille hasn't traveled a lot, so
I
took her to like her first baseball games.
Oh, yeah?
For the last 4 years.
Oh, nice.
And
Dodgers or?
Yeah, so we watched the Dodger game in San Francisco, so Giants-Dodgers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you guys were the Outlaws in the crowd.
Yeah.
Did you wear all your Dodgers gear?
I wore my hat because I learned from the last time that
that's brave, man.
Yeah.
Because that's like a big rivalry right there.
You know, what's crazy is, like, you could tell people were giving me, like, dirty looks, like, oh, this Dodger fan, like, he's probably crazy, like, or he's probably going to be, like, obnoxious, and to be honest, man, like, I if I was, like, 16 years old again, maybe, I would be obnoxious about it, but I kind of learned just to do my own thing and not bug other people's spaces, but the ironic thing that I found was that was the second time that I had gone to a Giants game in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I went with my coworkers, and I did wear full-on Dodger gear. Like, I wore, like, my sweatshirt, or I wore, like, a jersey underneath. I wore my socks.
Wow,
like, everything was Dodgered out. And I wasn't bugging anyone. I wasn't really getting loud, because I'm like, I know I'm not on my home turf. But the weirdest thing was, and the funniest part for me was we were blowing them out. It was like 7-1. I mean, in baseball, that's a blowout.
Oh, yeah. That's hard to come back from that.
Even like through 3-4 innings, there was these older gentlemen sitting in front of me. It was like a white guy wearing a Giants hat and a black guy. And it was an interesting relationship because I could hear everything they were talking about. And I'm like, yeah, like, these guys probably have known each other their whole lives. But it was reminding me of like a Morgan Freeman movie. Like when...
What was that movie? I was just thinking the same thing. There was a movie like that where it was... Yeah, it was Morgan Freeman and some white guy.
Yeah.
And they had like known each other forever. And they were like sitting on a bench somewhere.
Yeah.
And they were like just talking about the old days.
And I was tripping out because I'm like, man, this is like real life. Like Morgan... I don't know the name of the movie either.
I don't either. I'll have to look it up now.
But... I wasn't getting loud until like closer to the end of the game, ironically. Yeah. I'm just like, like it's almost over. Like all that pent up aggression or that affinity for my team.
Right.
And they leave like in the 7th inning because by then it's like 12-1 or 10-1.
The two guys did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And right when they get up, the guy like looks at me, the white guy, not not that makes a difference.
right.
I guess since I'm telling the story.
Yeah.
And he looks me straight in the eye, and he's just like, "Well, I hope you guys could get past Houston in the World Series or the Yankees, because everyone was like, it's either to be Houston or Yankees that year."
Right.
And then he looks me straight in the eye, and he's like, "F you," and I'm just like, "Whoa, like."
You're like, easy, dude, easy.
This old man, like, he's like in his 80s, and I'm just tripping out. I'm like, I didn't say anything to this guy the whole game.
Yeah.
Like, I was I thought I was being polite by like not yelling in anyone's ear
Right.
on their home turf.
Just your presence there was enough.
Well, he was probably just really pissed off that
because they
my
lost
team
so bad.
was
Yeah,
blowing them out in San Francisco.
Yeah,
waste of a $80 ticket.
Yeah,
so
which I don't. I mean, I like sports, but I mean, I don't understand that severity of it. Like just getting so into it that you're literally going to be mad at somebody who's cheering for a different team that beats your team. I'm like, dude, that's I don't know, that's nuts to me. But so you're born in 98.
Mm-hmm.
So my oldest is born in 98.
Okay.
And then my youngest is 13. So there's a gap between my oldest and my youngest. Is the same as you and your sister.
Yeah.
What month were you born in 98?
August.
Oh wow, almost.
Yeah.
My daughter was November.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she'll be 25 in this November, like coming up in like next week. So you're 25 now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Crazy. And how do you feel about like your daughter being that age and then you being your age? Because like, you guys are still pretty close in age. Like that's not.
Yeah.
For instance, Camille, her dad is in his 60s.
Oh
like,
wow.
He's 20, but she's 25.
Right.
So
right.
I feel like it's a different relationship.
Yeah.
When you're closer in age.
Yeah, we got started early. I mean, our oldest wasn't expected. It wasn't like we planned that out. I mean, my girlfriend at the time was 17 when she found out that we were pregnant. I was 19, and and I was 20, and she was 18 by the time my daughter was born. It made us grow up really quick.
Yeah.
But no, I have a great relationship with my older daughter. I mean, she's living down in the LA area now. She's married.
Okay.
We have a really good relationship. I'll go down there and visit her, and we'll go to concerts and stuff, or chill. Yeah, it's good. I have a good relationship with all my kids, and my oldest son is 21. You probably saw him leaving too when he was there. So he's the one that does all the techie stuff with the podcast, because I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is how to click record and talk to people. That's my job, and then he does all the stuff. If you listen to that episode, you hear like the intro song and the intro music and all that. He wrote all of that.
That's cool.
So all I did was write those quotes, and I went around to different friends and family, and I said, "Hey, can you say this quote?" And they would say it a bunch of times, and I would pick the one I liked best, and I gave them to Aiden, my son. I was like, "Here, I just put these in this order and put music or something, make it sound cool." And then he gave me back what he gave me back. I was like, I almost cried. I was like, dude, this sounds so awesome. Thank you so much.
It's legit, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds cool, But so he does all that, and then I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son that are still here at the house. Well, Aiden just moved back in too, so I guess we have 3 at the house now. But yeah, I mean, it's good. We've tried to maintain a good relationship with our kids. We've homeschooled all our kids, so we're with them often. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool watching them grow up. And now my oldest daughters, they're talking about when they want to start having kids, making me a grandpa. I mean, I'm only 45.
Yeah.
I'll probably be a grandpa before I'm 50, I would imagine. So that's kind of cool. But yeah.
That's a trip, because like, I'm sure to you, because it's been described to me many times with my grandpa, because I have a close relationship with him.
Mm-hmm.
He tells me all the time, like, to me, 5 years ago, 10 years ago isn't so long ago.
Yeah.
So, like, to see your daughter being my age, already being married, and then now talking about kids, that just means it probably, like, makes you think a lot. It probably hits you in the feels.
Oh,
too.
yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, man, that's
well,
crazy.
and you're 25, you're getting married soon. Do you have a date set, or are you guys...
We have a year set now.
Okay.
It kept getting pushed back because of the whole economy and the way everything's going. But we're planning on 2025. So we're not too far away anymore.
Nice.
It was far away because I first got with her during COVID.
Okay. That's when you guys met?
We went to high school together.
Oh, okay.
But, we kind of rekindled and reconnected. And
were you guys just like acquaintances in high school, or were you like kind of off and on again together?
That's like an interesting conversation too. Cause, I had a thing for her. Mm-hmm. She knew it. Mm-hmm. We kind of like kissed and got together for a bit, like a month. But there was jealousy involved with one of my friends because he like marked that like, hey, that's my girl. And
oh no!
I was just like, well, do I really want to end a friendship, especially because I didn't know her like that,
right?
Or do I want to cut it off? And to me, and her and I have had many conversations about this since then, especially because we were kids then.
Right.
I think I was like 13.
Oh wow.
I told her, I'm like, well, I chose him because and I broke your heart, and I broke a little bit of my heart because I knew him longer, which was only like 2 years.
Yeah, but you probably weren't thinking to yourself, "Oh, this is a girl I'm going to marry someday."
No,
that had you have been thinking that way, you probably would have just broken off with your friend and be like, "All right, man, this girl's the one,"
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I guess that goes with all decisions, right? Like once you've already made a decision, you can look back. You're like, "Well, I probably wouldn't have gone about it that way," but that's everyone. You can't live with the regret. I'm just happy that it worked out the way it has and it did.
Yeah.
Because you learn and grow from those experiences.
Oh, of course, yeah. And now that you guys are together now and getting married, you can look back on it and almost kind of, I'm sure you kind of laugh about it and be like, "Oh man, we almost didn't happen," or whatever,
Yeah.
So that's
and
cool.
she told me, she's like, "You better tell that story on our wedding." And I'm just like, yeah, it sounds kind of romantic, but I think I'm going to get a little bit grilled by your family.
Right.
I like cut it off and like broke your heart.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm saying I broke her.
You'll have to get your best man to say the story.
Yeah.
Because usually the groom doesn't get to talk much during the wedding.
That's a good point.
They just kind of sit there and eat food, and everybody comes by and hugs them and tells them congratulations, and
Yeah, I feel like it's almost they're just staring out, eating, just waiting for the day to end, really. Mm-hmm. And then when those speeches come out, it's either very empathetic, you're in the feels, or it's almost like a roast. Like you're up there, and like if it's all your buddies as your groomsmen, they're just probably talking smack about you.
Right, exactly.
Just getting laughs, but I definitely think that's going to be an interesting time.
Yeah.
When we talk about that.
Well, that's awesome, dude. I mean, that's because honestly, I mean, your generation, like kids your age right now, they don't. I say kids, you're 25. You're younger than me, so you're a kid. So like that generation, they don't like marriage isn't even barely like. I know so many people your age that when I ask them if they're getting married, they're like, "No, I'm never getting married," or if they are getting married, well, I would ask you, do you guys want to have kids or eventually?
Yeah,
okay, so that's also unheard of, right? Like a lot of your age, like, "Oh, I'll get married, but I don't want to ever have kids." Yeah. And it's like, "Oh, I don't have kids. It's such a blessing and such a cool part of life." And they're like, "Yeah, but I want to do all these things," and it's like, it usually comes back to like themselves and like this selfishness involved, and But if somebody doesn't want kids, I'm like, just don't have kids, because there's nothing worse than people that have kids and you see them with their kids and you can tell they do not want kids. That's sad. That's sad for the kids. Or like they're like, "Oh, my parents don't even like me." It's just like how's that gotta be growing up for a kid? That's horrible.
I totally agree with that because I was like the same situation that you were describing with your daughter, Blee, right? That's your oldest.
Yeah.
I was an accident, so my mom was very young as well. She was She was 15, actually. She had me at 16.
Okay.
So she was probably like 15 and a half, to be specific. And my dad had just turned 18. So he was 17 going on 18. Okay. And it worked out, luckily. Yeah. But if you're bringing a kid into this world, you better have that moral compass straight. Sure. You better be an adult about it because you made an adult decision to do that.
Right. You play the game. Yeah. Sometimes, like we weren't expecting it. She came out of that bathroom with the pregnancy test sobbing. It wasn't like an exciting moment for us. Like, yay, we're going to be parents. Of course, now looking back now, I'm glad, right? Because like I said, my daughter's a blessing and we're glad she's in our lives. And everything that we had to change in our own lives because of her coming into our lives was for the better, ultimately. Like I said, we had to grow up fast. Yeah. Which was good because the route, the kind of the path that I was going down probably wouldn't have been a good one. You know what I mean? It's kind of the party scene, and whatever. You're young, you do that kind of stuff, but and for most of us, we don't have to grow up when we're 20. It's like usually that's kind of when it's getting started. 21 is legal drinking age, and I can go out to bars now. I can do this kind of stuff. But it was like, nope, we're parents. Yeah, here we go. You know. So, but
and I could see that it's like. And I have a close relationship with my mom, decent relationship with my dad. Okay. And we've talked about that a lot too. And I think that's why the reason I waited or am going to wait so long to have kids. Like, for me, so long is like 29, 30. That's like the sweet spot for me. Okay. Albeit you can't necessarily choose when you have kids. No. It's up to the world and God. In my eyes. Sure. But yeah, it wasn't a Hallmark moment either. Like you're saying, like your wife was sobbing, and I'm sure my mom was terrified. Right.
So yeah, because she was still, Bethany and my wife were still in high school.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's not something you're looking at senior year. You're looking at graduation stuff and all that. It's like, no, how about being a mom instead? It's like, wait, what?
And society, and not even society, I should say, the constructs of high school could be very, very mean to people in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't blame anyone that chooses not to talk about it at that point or kind of holds it all in, because I know my mom, she didn't choose at that age to like talk about these things until like I was of age where I could understand hey, like these are big decisions in life, like it's not that I don't want you to have kids, it's not that I don't want you to do this or do that, but this is how hard it was for me and your dad, and this is what I want you to understand.
So she must have been, what, sophomore in high school when she got pregnant?
Yeah,
maybe
I think
junior?
so, because she went to AG High.
Oh,
and my dad went to Rigetti. So two different high schools, too.
Okay, and how old is your mom?
She's from 81, so she's 42. Yeah.
Okay, so my wife went to AG.
Okay.
And my wife was born in 80.
Oh, dang.
So that would be even funnier if they knew each other.
She might,
because I'm gonna look at my yearbook for your dad, and I'm sure when I see him, I'll at least recognize him by face and be like, oh, I remember that guy. I remember seeing that guy in the halls, or whatever.
You'll probably see him. My dad was the kind of guy that like, he was like a little. I don't want to call him this, but my dad was like a wannabe gangster. I think.
Oh yeah. I think we all kind of were in the 90s.
He was trying to get into that scene, you know? And
yeah,
I'm happy he didn't go through fully committing into that.
Right.
He's the kind of guy that had his collared shirt buttoned up all the way.
Oh yeah.
Had his shirt tucked in.
Nice.
Played handball.
Okay.
Liked the scrap.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm the total opposite.
Okay.
And I think purposely.
Yeah. You're like, I don't want to be that way. But I mean, I think the 90s were definitely different than, that was just kind of what it was, back then. But so, all right, man. Well, let's jump into some music stuff. Now that we kind of got to know our life story a little bit.
Yeah. I think we definitely did.
Yeah, I always like to do that in the beginning of something I don't know, because it's like I don't even know where you're coming from, where you live, like where you're born, so I like to get that kind of stuff going. But with music, it's always the first topic I go into. Kind of breaks the ice and gets into stuff. But do you like music? Are you a music guy?
I love music.
Love music.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love singing too.
Oh, you're a singer.
I'm not a singer.
You just love singing.
I love singing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish I was a singer.
You sing like in the shower in your car and stuff? Do you ever do karaoke or
karaoke?
Okay.
In front of family members, but at special occasions, very special occasions. I'm very choosy on that.
Yeah. Like what kind of music would you generally sing?
It just depends. There's so many genres out there that I love.
Death metal?
Probably not that one. Though my brother has gotten me into that more recently in the gym. Mm-hmm. I would sing mostly like ballads. Swing, so like Frank Sinatra.
Oh, like old crooner stuff.
Yeah, that stuff. But then I'll go like more present day as well with like country, like Luke Combs, Wallen.
Nice.
Jason Aldean.
Okay.
Which I'm surprised he's still in the charts, honestly. Cause his longevity is really good.
Right.
Spanish music as well.
Okay.
But it has to be a specific song that I've really practiced and known.
Okay.
Because of my broken Spanish, essentially.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, really anything. Maybe not
cool, man.
heavy metal like how you're saying.
Right.
But
have you ever done? Do you do any writing? Do you ever write your own songs or lyrics or anything? Or
I actually did in high school.
Okay.
I think that's a time. That's a weird time in both a young man and a young woman's life. Maybe it's the hormones. I don't know.
You wrote a bunch of love songs or what?
Yeah. I did write love songs and just how I was feeling.
Right. It's a good outlet.
Yeah.
Even if you never do anything with it, at least you're pouring your own thoughts onto the page.
Yeah, you're releasing it on the page, instead of just keeping it pent up inside.
Right.
So
well, that's cool, man. So I like to go back to the earliest. What's the first time in your life you can remember thinking to yourself, I really like this song or this band, or I just like,
I was thinking about that yesterday and on the way here, because I have a very unique situation in which my dad in high school, he was a DJ. So he DJ'd, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, what he told me was he used to DJ at the rallies at Rigetti.
Oh, really?
So they allowed him to do that
in
the gym. And I don't know if it was outside, like in your guys' amphitheater or quad or whatever.
Yeah,
they
that's
call it.
usually where the rallies were. Yeah, yeah. And
then,
we would have bands play out there sometimes too.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they would let them do that.
And I know they have like the marimba band nowadays. I don't know if they had it then.
Oh yeah.
So that's a long-standing tradition too. I was gonna say like everyone just like knows everyone like in the Santa Maria Valley. You know?
It's
if you've been here long enough.
It drives us nuts. I mean, it drives like I'll be anywhere. I can go anywhere. It doesn't matter where, and I'm guaranteed I'm going to run into somebody I know, and it drives my wife nuts. She's like, "Do you know everybody in this town?" I was like, "No, not yet."
That just reminds me of Pat so much and my dad.
Right, exactly.
Somehow, some way, they'll know someone, and it's like, "Oh yeah, you're related to this person."
Right.
Oh yeah, I went to school with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I don't have relationships like that nowadays.
Yeah.
But no, yeah. So he was a DJ. Then my uncle, his younger brother, got into the same thing. Mm-hmm. But then my grandpa, he was an actual singer, and he did sing, and he has a band. So he went across the country, and
nice.
He did that whole thing in the 80s. So it's really hard to pinpoint. I know that's such like a cop-out answer.
Well, no, that just means it was such a big part of your life from an early age that you can't really pinpoint the first moment. I mean, that makes sense.
Because I have so many good memories of many different songs.
Yeah. So what about like a genre? Like if I know you just kind of said you like a lot of different ones, but what's the one you always fall back on? Like this is my all-time favorite kind of music.
Present day, it's country. Present day.
Okay.
I think if you would have asked the 16-year-old me, especially in high school with all the friends that also listened to it, it was more of that R&B, hip-hop, rap kind of scene. Mm-hmm. So present day, it's country, though.
Okay. So what's some of your favorite country guys?
I like the guys that get deep with it. And they're all storytellers at the end of the day.
Right.
But Johnny Cash, I have some great memories listening to him. Mm-hmm. Drunk memories listening to him as well. Drinking. Right. But I really liked one of the last songs that he wrote and produced, which was Hurt. And I know they've...
Oh, it was a cover.
Yeah.
Cover of Nine Inch Nails. Yeah, that's a great song.
They feature that in a lot of movie soundtracks.
Well, the first time I think it got big was the trailer for Logan.
There you go, yeah.
Right? When they played it in that trailer, and it was like, oh man, I hurt myself. Yeah. It's like, dude, this song is moving. And at that time, and I'm a Nine Inch Nails fan, I didn't even know that was a Nine Inch Nails song.
I
thought it was just a Johnny Cash song
either.
Yeah, and I looked it up. I was like, oh, this is a cover. But I still think Johnny Cash did it way better. Way better than Nine Inch Nails.
I think he has. If you like truly know his backstory, like his drug use, his his marriages, because I believe he had quite a bit of marriages, right? It was like 2 or 3.
That I'm not sure of. I don't know. I know he was on and off again with what's her face, June Carter. Yeah.
But
Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all seen that movie, right, with Joaquin Phoenix. But
if you listen to the lyrics, it's you don't have to be a drug user yourself. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be an alcoholic yourself. It's just moving and captivating because it's part of the human experience. Right. And he was already dying when he was coming out with that song.
Oh, I bet.
So he was kind of just going over, to me, his whole career, but his whole life.
Right.
And the more you listen to songs like that, and the older you get, and I think for me, I don't know why, but as soon as I hit my mid-20s, I started to see things and think things differently, even though they had been told to me by the older generation many times.
It's funny you say that because scientifically they're saying that for the male brain it's around between 24 26 in that area where your brain fully develops finally and the maturity starts to set in. So that makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah, so you correct me if I'm wrong, but you start using your prefrontal cortex more so?
Maybe.
Or is it the reciprocal of that?
I don't even know.
I know that that's one of the things and that your brain hasn't essentially fully developed until you're like in your mid-20s.
Yeah, and for women it's earlier. I think it's like 20 to 21, something like they mature faster.
And that's why that sense of maturity is there.
Right.
Although I will say I question, maybe it's more so on the outside. They know they're better at showing the maturity on the outside, but if you're the same age, you're still questioning the same things. I think. Like, what do you want to do in life?
Right.
Who's your true partner going to be? If you're into that kind of thing. Right. Education. yada yada.
Yeah, because all your big life decisions are coming up, right? That's the time where you're like, do I go to school? Do I get married? Do I have kids? Do I get this job? Right? It's like, that's when it's all coming to a head, kind of. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So Johnny Cash, old school. That's old school country. That's the kind of country I like.
Yeah.
Like Johnny Cash. I like Hank Williams Sr. I like, it's some of those older guys. I like some of the newer stuff too, but not as much.
It's gone too pop for you, huh?
Well, but I like pop music. Like I'm a Taylor Swift fan. I like her country stuff in the early, which was already kind of poppy country as it was. But then I love her pop music too. I love her new stuff. So, but
I respect Taylor Swift and her tenacity and her work ethic. I mean, this year it seems like every year's her year.
Oh yeah,
but
she's on top of the world.
Me personally, as a fan, not so much.
Okay,
but I respect her work.
Right. That's like my wife. My wife respects her because she just went, because my daughter's a huge fan, and my wife went to see the Eras tour with her down in the LA area just recently, and my wife's like, yeah, she's not like a huge Taylor Swift fan, but especially after the show, she's like, I really respect what she does.
Yeah.
Like, she is a fantastic performer. She's a great songwriter. There's not a whole lot of artists these days that are writing their own music, and she's always writing her own music. So, but anyway, did you find yourself liking more of the older country more than the newer country, or?
Yeah, because that was like my foundation.
Okay.
Because like my older uncles and then my father, they all listened to that kind of thing. That was my foundation, and then as I've grown up, I've gone to appreciate as well the newer artists. But like right now, when you brought up Hank Williams Sr., I mean, I'll listen to Junior as well. Like Family Tradition is a great song that you'll always hear at a family reunion.
Right.
I like Ray Price, Release Me. So yeah, that song, Release Me.
I don't know if I've ever heard Ray Price.
It goes, please release me, I am yours. Or
no.
Something like that.
I'll have to look it up.
It's a really good song.
Is he older or new? Ray Price?
Oh, he's way back in the day. It's
I
like from the I believe that song came out in the late 30s, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So like that's kind of like my foundation to country, and I like studying history a lot. I was like that in high school. I was like that in college.
Okay.
So I think once I started reading about these people's lives and what they truly went through, I grew to appreciate more what it took for them to get there.
Right.
A lot of these guys or gals didn't necessarily have the environment or the thing that was going to propel them to success or to what they were, but they still made it through somehow, some way. And that somehow, some way was very, very hard work, practice, and a little bit of luck for sure.
Yeah.
And I grew to appreciate that with a lot of those artists.
So it's more of the realistic kind of lyrics and stuff, like where they're talking about their own life that you connect with. And okay.
I really do. And that's why I have an affinity for country. But it's the same thing with rap. I mean, rap and the old rap, I would say.
Right.
I can't listen to this stuff today. I really can't.
So yeah, I have a hard time too. But I will say there is some stuff that like Brighton or some people at work have showed me that I'm like, okay, this is all right. Most of it I think sucks, and I'll even tell him, I was like, dude, that's horrible. What is that? That's horrible. He's like, you don't like this? No, nobody should like that. That's the worst. This guy should not even have a record label. Like, this is horrible. But like when you say old rap, like what did you like back in the day?
Well, you see, and that's the thing. I don't want to offend like my father or you, but like when I say old for me is like listening to Nas,
Okay.
Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I was born in '98.
Right.
They were already popping in '96.
Right.
Nas was probably popping like in '94.
Yeah.
When he came out with Illmatic.
Yeah.
So.
Which still holds up.
And that still hits.
It's fantastic. Yeah. And it was written is still really good too. Like I love Nas. I think he's phenomenal.
That's probably like my favorite rapper from that era.
Okay.
And ironically or coincidentally, when I was listening to Brighton's podcast, he was talking more of that West Coast, like Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg.
Right.
But he was talking about the 2001 album.
Yeah.
And
like, still Dre on it.
Yeah. And honestly, that was miraculous that he could come back. And to him, that was a comeback at that time.
Right.
Because I know that he then came out with Eminem, and they redid another comeback.
Right,
but somehow he just keeps coming back.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Dre is very... talented. I mean, obviously, I don't think he's the greatest rapper to ever walk the earth, but I think he's, as a talent scout, oh my gosh, just look at all the people that starting with NWA and all the guys that came out of that. You had Ice Cube, Eazy-E. Eazy-E died way too young, but Ice Cube, look, he's very popular now, still famous in a lot of ways, and then doing you got Eminem, Snoop, these are all people that Dre discovered, right? 50 Cent, right? We would have never known these guys. Yeah, it's just nuts to me.
Yeah.
So I grew up listening to nothing but hip hop. That was all I listened to, and back then I didn't even know what hip hop was. I never heard that word. It was just rap. Back then we just called it rap, but it was the early stuff, NWA, Too Short, DJ Quick, Second to None. That's what I grew up listening to until I got into grunge music in the 90s, and then that kind of opened my eyes to all the guitar, what I would call guitar music back then, which I didn't like it before that. But I don't think I ever really gave it a chance.
And I've heard of grunge, but to be more specific, what would that be?
Grunge would be it kind of came out of Seattle in the late 80s, early 90s. You had Nirvana was a big one, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden. All those guys kind of, Mudhoney, they all kind of follow the grunge. And then you had bands out of San Diego, like Stone Temple Pilots, that fit that mold. It just for me it was Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam was the one that I first heard that. Oh my gosh! And then I listened to. Oh, and then my parents got me tickets to see Pearl Jam live in San Francisco. I was it was awesome. Well, it was awesome and it wasn't awesome because they only sang 6 songs. They were the headliner. And they only sang 6 songs, and he's like, "Oh, I had food poisoning all night. I'm out of here." And that started a whole thing where you could get your money back, and I never got my money back though, just because I wanted to keep the tickets.
And that was your first concert, witnessing them?
That was probably my first ever concert that I can remember going to. Yeah, I think that was the first concert I ever went to. But the cool thing about it was a band called Bad Religion. I don't know if you ever heard of Bad Religion. No. They opened up for Pearl Jam, and I had never heard of them until that day. And they're a punk rock band, and that was what opened me up to punk rock. And to this day, punk's my favorite kind of music.
And where was that at, you were saying? I know San Francisco.
That was at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. So it was an outdoor venue. I think they still have shows there today. I think it's still a venue.
Golden Gate Park.
Yeah.
What's that near, if you had to pinpoint it?
Dude, I don't even remember. I don't think I haven't been back by there since then. And I was only 15 or 16 when I went to that show. I wasn't even driving yet. My parents dropped us off at the gate. Yeah, it was nuts.
That's pretty rad, though.
Yeah.
That your parents allowed you to do that. And
oh yeah.
They trusted that, hey,
right.
You'll be safe, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Don't
well, and it wasn't a good I have memories now, and there was a guy walking around. It must have been 100 and something degrees out there. I don't remember what time. It must have been summertime, July or August. But it was there was a guy walking around in a big old trench coat. And I was like, what? Why is he in this trench coat, right? And then sure enough, he's got all these drugs in there, and he's selling drugs. He's walking around openly, just hey, I just, selling down everybody what he got. And I was like, oh, man. And I wasn't into drugs, so I wasn't it didn't really affect me at all. But it was just kind of an eye-opening kind of thing for me as a young kid. Be like, oh, my gosh, this is what it's all about here. This is hardcore,
That's always the eye-opener, right?
Right.
That's one of... For you, that was one of the first things, but for me, that was one of the last things in adulthood. It was wow, there's so much more drugs prevalent in society and that use than for me, it was shielded,
right, purposely,
right, and I didn't realize that until I talked to my parents about it,
right.
But then you're just man, there's a lot of people using drugs, and It's an eye opener for sure,
right?
So I'm sure for you, you're just whoa, what the hell's going on?
Yeah,
here?
And it's kind of and it's scary knowing that when you start bringing kids into the world, and you're but of course you do your best and you protect them from it, and you teach them don't ever do that, And I've always used examples working at the library as long as I have. Obviously, we have a lot of addicted people that are in there, and it's sad. And I always think to myself, I got some 16-year-old girl in front of me who's asking for a guest pass who can't even control her body because she's so messed up on drugs. I'm I always think that's somebody's kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just sad to me. So I'll always use those examples to my kids, and I'll be like, oh, hey, this guy came in, here's what he was doing. And they'll be like, whoa, that sounds horrible. I said, yeah, don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's sad because you're being empathetic, and you're man, that's someone's kid.
Right.
And yet there's still a lesson to be learned from that, and you're telling your kids hey, this is what I saw today,
right?
And it's not, to me, like, and to me, when parents say those things, you have to. It's not like a scolding or indoctrination, for that matter. It's just like, if you do A, you most likely will get to B and C. And
Right.
It's a sad reality.
Yeah.
You know? It's a
Well,
sad
especially
reality,
now
sure.
with all the fentanyl stuff that's going on, it's like that's the one that's like, oh my gosh, that's it's horrible.
Yeah, and
It's crazy.
America's the biggest buyer.
Yep.
It's been that way for so long now.
Right.
And
Right.
getting it from Mexico.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
when is it ever going to end?
Yeah.
When is it ever going to end? I don't
Right.
think it will.
No.
And that's what's sad too, when you become a realist.
Yeah.
About the things like that. And I talk to my brother a lot about those things, and he's like, why are you being so pessimistic about this? I'm like, I'm not being pessimistic. I think I'm just being real. Man.
Realistic,
like,
yeah. Yep.
I'm like, I told him, like, trust me, I don't want these things to happen. I don't want a record number of fentanyl overdoses. I don't want crazy heroin use. I mean, and I don't even have to get to the national scale. I always tell them about like our local community. I'm like, Santa Maria with the homelessness.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I should say primarily Santa Maria, because I live in SLO County now, and it's
okay.
bad over there too. But I think more so in San Luis Obispo specifically, in that city, compared to like AG.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Because here in Santa Maria, like, I mean, just like every block, it seems like you just see one person that's homeless and has an issue.
Yeah, the only thing we haven't seemingly gotten to yet is like when you drive through like LA or some of the bigger cities and you see like literal encampments. Like you look at some of the freeway overpasses where there's literally, I mean, obviously cars aren't using that because it's just full of tents, right? You literally see like 30 tents up there. Like, oh my gosh, it's like a homeless village.
It's
terrible. And thankfully we don't have that yet here, that I know of anyway. I know if you go down like in the riverbed, there's supposedly a lot of stuff down there, but that they're able to get far enough away to where unless the cops go out there specifically looking, they're not going to find them.
And that's funny because, not funny, but that you brought that point up, because I was coming home from work probably like 5 months ago. I was heading northbound on the 101, and I was going over that bridge connecting to Napomo, and there was a fire that I could see, or smoke causing
in the riverbed.
In the riverbed.
Okay.
And I know it had barely started because it wasn't like a huge cloud, and it was still going up into the atmosphere. And again, like the immature me, like has a mentality like, oh, you shouldn't like care about what's going on right there. Like just keep moving like everyone else, or don't like snitch, I guess, because that's kind of like a mentality that that I grew up with. Yeah. At least when I was a kid. Yeah. But I was just like, I gotta call like 911. Like this could turn into something.
Oh sure.
So I called them and I'm like, hey, I saw a fire at the riverbed, and the operator's like, oh, let me connect you to I don't remember what division that is for firefighters, but it's like the county firefighters. So
oh, okay.
It wasn't like Santa Maria firefighters.
Right, since you were off the grid. Yeah.
And then I told them, like, hey, there's a fire in the riverbed. And the operator was just like, oh, yeah, like right here? I'm like, yeah. Oh, okay. And then like, thank you. And they just hung up. And I'm just like, I started thinking about it on the way home after that. I'm just like, they're really used to that. Like they must get tons of calls about stuff going down in the riverbed right there.
Yeah.
And it's most likely related to the homelessness problem.
Right.
So,
yeah, and that's the sad thing too, because then you start to get to the point like, should I even call?
Yeah.
Because I mean, when you get the operator, it's kind of like, oh, okay, again.
Yeah.
Like it's like, okay, if you guys already know this is an ongoing thing, then I'm going to stop calling you.
Yeah.
But
like, are you guys going to solve this societal issue in our local community? It's not like I'm asking you to fix I don't know, inflation in the California and the United States, the gas tax. I'm not asking. I'm asking, like, can you guys address this issue that can affect dozens, if not thousands, of people?
Right.
Because that's all it takes. It takes a spark. And I mean, did you see that house that blew up last month in Hancock Village?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we drove by it. We drove over there.
Yeah, I did too.
It happened just to see it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like houses like 6 and 7 houses away each direction from that house all had boards on their windows because it obviously shattered all their windows out. You know,
I mean, it was a literal explosion.
Yeah.
So that
crazy.
That magnitude of that explosion caused damage on those other homes.
That's nuts.
And I told Camille, I'm like, it's not that I believe that will happen, but that can happen. And all it takes is a phone call. You never know. Kind of like the butterfly effect, right?
Right.
Maybe I'm the difference. Maybe I'm not. You'll never know.
Yeah.
But,
and at last I heard, nobody died from that, right?
I don't think so.
That's what's crazy to me. I know they took a couple people to the hospital. But I mean, if a house explodes and there's people in the house, how does nobody die from that? That's amazing to me.
And you were saying you got to see it physically, right? Like, I took her to see it, and I'm like, "Do you see this? Like, it's like level.
It's level.
There's nothing. There's not even like walls standing anymore.
Right.
Nothing.
It was just like the chimney or whatever was.
Yeah. And that's like stone, right? So maybe that's why it structurally was sufficient for that.
Yeah, it was such a crazy thing. I remember I was working at the library that day, and we have the rangers that come through and they patrol the library and stuff, and they were talking about they were all getting called out to that because it was just like, did you have their house blew up? I said, wait, blew up? He goes, yeah, like a house exploded.
Yeah.
I was like, a house exploded? Like, or do you mean like there was an explosion in a house? No, the house exploded. I'm like, how does that happen? Right? Like, I mean, it's like you figure like a gas leak or something, but it's like if you're home, you smell a gas leak. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a very strong odor. Or most people have like carbon monoxide detectors that are going to pick that up or whatever. I'm like, how does it get so bad that it explodes? My first thought was that it was like a meth lab because you hear stories like that all the time, like in cities where it's like, oh, in this meth lab, whatever, they mixed the wrong two things together and the whole house exploded or whatever. You know, and it's like, okay, well that makes sense. But they said no. They said it wasn't that at all. So
and that's funny that you mentioned that because. Same thing though when I talked about it with my family, like my brother and Camille, I'm like, they automatically assume without me asking, they're like, oh, it had to be a meth lab. Same exact thing that you said, and I was just like I don't want to be surface level here, but it's like it's Hancock Village, that neighborhood and close to Marion is very nice.
Right.
I don't really. Right. Then again, though, like maybe someone would purposely set their operation up in a place where you wouldn't expect it.
Exactly.
But I'm like, I don't think so. And sure enough, to your point. I think they've stated like it wasn't related to anything like that.
Right.
I don't know what they pinpointed that to.
I don't remember. I thought I heard it was a gas leak.
Yeah.
That's all I heard. I don't know from where or.
And I heard a story from Camille recently, and it made me trip out because like and this goes back to earlier in the whole conversation of like how generationally we have different mindsets. She has younger nieces and nephews.
Okay.
And. She's watched them since she was like 13, so she grew up with them. Her oldest niece is 16 now, so Camille's 25. Yeah,
dang.
So she was almost like a mom to me. Like it was like no wonder you have that motherly like, love, like you love cooking and all that because you kind of had to because like you wanted to do it for your sister and her family. But she told me that her sister came home one day. And I don't know if it was her niece, like so her sister's daughter, or the person that was watching her kids, which wasn't Camille, and they left the stove on. Ooh. And she was out of state, and the stove was still running for like 3 days straight. And I was just like
just letting gas out?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I just told her, Camille, like, man, like if I would have done that, like my parents would have whooped me. Like, and like that's like a huge no.
But there was nobody home at
no
the time?
one was home.
Okay.
There was an animal home. That's sad too because you could kill the animal or
did the animal survive?
Yeah. It was,
wow. Okay.
I mean, it's a big house, so maybe like it didn't affect it.
Like a small
much.
leak. It wasn't coming out that strong.
Yeah. Well, the flame was on actually.
Oh, let the fire on.
Yeah. The flame was on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I still think that could cause something.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I mean, it could potentially cause a fire.
Especially if it's 3 days straight.
Right.
But I don't know, like maybe I'm looking too deeply into it, but I kind of look at that as like a generational thing. Like,
sure,
let's teach kids to properly do things like that. Like, hey, you're gonna turn on an open flame. Let's remember to turn that off.
Yeah,
let's make that cement and concrete.
Right. Yeah,
you know?
that's pretty important. So, oh man. All right, so let's go back to So we did genre. That was country. Had you give me a couple country guys. What's the most influential band or artist for you personally? Something that's impacted your life in a way that's beyond just this is a good song.
I think because of the way you structured that question, what comes to mind is when I went to the Cali Roots Festival up in Monterey Bay with my parents. So they took me 1 year removed from high school with my brother and sister, actually. And my brother was still in high school, and then sister in elementary. We want to go watch, like... So the Cali Roots is like a reggae festival. Okay. And Revolution's one of the bands that headlined. Yeah. But what was cool is 311 was actually there too. Nice. And to be honest, like I had heard of 311 at that time. Yeah. Like, Amber's like an all-time classic. Oh yeah. You know? Yeah. But I have never seen them live. I mean, if I barely even heard one of their songs. Right. So I watched Nick Hexum. He's the lead singer. Yep. One of the lead singers. Yeah. And S.A. Martinez singing too. Yeah. And I got to watch that front row because like my parents made it a point to tell us like, hey, like they got us like a 3-day pass off for all of us. So we watched like I think one of the Marleys was there, like Ziggy or somebody. Steven, maybe. Steven. There's so many of them I always forget now. Yeah. And that was like 6 years ago. Yeah, Bob spread his seat around a lot, I think. Yeah. Bob was busy. Yeah, no, he definitely was. I don't blame him. Blame him. Yeah. He has a talented family for sure. Yeah, yeah. But wanted to keep the tradition going. Right. But I had never got to see like that band live. I had seen Revolution already, coincidentally. So I already knew they were good. But when I watched Nick Hexum perform, S.A. Martinez, and the rest of the band, that was, I don't know if I should use the word transcendental, but like it just changed my perspective on things. I'm like, wow, like there's more to life than just listening to hip-hop and rap at the time. Like I could watch this kind of genre of music and really enjoy it live. And it was a bonding experience because my parents were there, and then my brother was there, and then I got into a whole like 311 phase. I'm like, like I'm gonna listen to 311 like every day now. Did you go all the way back? No, to be honest, like it was still like more of the popular songs, like mainstream. Yeah. Because when they came in, so they had, I think they had 2 albums out. I want to say they're from down like Santa Barbara area somewhere. I think so. I might be totally wrong there. I'm probably wrong. No, I think Nick Hexum's like from the Washington area. Oh, is he? Okay. Something like that. You might be right. Maybe that's the origin story of the whole band as a whole. Yeah, I think I'm wrong. As soon as I said it, I was like, I don't think I'm right. But that's Revolution. Revolution. I know they're local. Yeah, I know they're local. But yeah, with 311, I remember they had that first big single was Down. It was on that blue album. I forgot I think it was just called 311. But I remember that came out like when I was in high school, and I remember the first time I heard that. I mean, this was before like bands like, you know, Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park and some of these ones that kind of took over kind of the rap rock kind of sound. But 311 was doing it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. You're hearing turntables, you're hearing the guy rap, then they're singing. Is it reggae? Is it hip hop? It's like there's so many different, a fusion of all these different genres. It was so cool. And I remember when I heard that, like I said, that was like their first big single was Down, and I loved it. And I bought that album, the blue album, and then listened to that whole thing and just thought, this is awesome. And at the time, I thought that was their first CD. And then I had found out through another friend. He's like, oh, no, dude, listen to this one. And he gave me the CD called Music. It's an album called Music. And then they had one called Grassroots, which I think was their first and second albums. And I popped those, and I was like, this is even better. And I was like, this is like, you know, and then, of course, later on, then they got really big, and then they started, you had a lot more, like, music videos on MTV, and they were being featured on soundtracks. I think, 50 First Dates, I think they covered, Love Song by the Cure. Yeah, so they got really big, but I've always loved 311. I think they're fantastic. Those guys are great. I've never got to see them live. But I've heard that it's a fantastic... It was an experience for sure. Yeah, because there's like 7 or 8 guys in that band or something. Is there a bunch of them? Unfortunately, because like I told you earlier, I like singing. Yeah. I keep more track of the lead singers or singers in general than I do the others. Not that I don't appreciate the drummer or the bassist or the guitarist, because I mean, when they have their solos, they rock out too. Oh yeah. Or like a saxophone too with Revolution. Yep. But no, and right now when you reminded me of Down, I think we were talking earlier about a cover with Johnny Cash, how he covered that song Hurt.
Yeah,
311 covered Don't Tread on Me.
Is that Don't Tread on Me? Who did that one?
I would have to look it up on
It's
Apple
like old
Music
classic
right
rock,
now.
like a Leonard Skinner or something, right?
Something like that, because it's the same scenario. Like, I would have to look it up, and then I'm just like, oh, wait, but this cover to me is better than the original.
Right.
And, yeah, I just like the hook and the chorus. I mean, it goes, before you're pointed at me, there's a possibility that I will turn you down or around. And Nick actually just continues to say, don't tread on me, don't tread on me. And like,
I don't think I've heard that cover. I got to check that one out.
It's good.
Was it on one of their albums, or is it like just like a single?
I think it is on the album, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then again,
check that out.
I don't know. You would have to check it out. I think you'll appreciate it, though. I mean, if you like Down still, like, it's kind of like...
I like all of it. I even like their newer stuff. That's more. They kind of started fusing into like more of a reggae sound. And a lot of their later stuff, I like that too. I mean, I don't do like I used to and be like, oh, this is the only kind of music I like. Or I say, people say, what's your favorite kind of music? I say good music. That's the kind I like. You know, I don't care if it's death metal or it's country or it's hip hop, like reggae. If it's a great song, I want to listen to it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really care what style it is, you know, because there's crap songs in every genre. There's good songs in every genre, you know.
That's true.
There's some rappers I can't stand. There's some rappers I think are brilliant, you know. There's some heavy metal bands that I think suck, and other ones I think are just the greatest thing ever. So, I mean, it just depends, you know.
And do you believe, like, with that, like, those tracks that suck, and I guess this is it's still related on music, but it's still a different conversation in a way. Do you believe it's due to like the commercialization of that band or?
Well, see, I don't. That's a good question, because I think that's something that does come up a lot when we talk about this. But I mean, not that it's ever come up. Nobody's ever asked me that, I don't think. But it's a good topic, because that's something that I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like. As soon as this band got popular, I don't like him anymore, or they say they're sellouts or whatever. I've never understood that. The only time I understand that is if a band like literally totally changes their style for the purpose of appealing to the crowd and making more money.
Yeah.
You know, like I think on another episode we were talking about the band Sugar Ray and how, I don't know if you're familiar with Sugar Ray.
Hills?
No, just Sugar Ray was the band. They did you'd know some of their songs, but their first album they had was really heavy, but they had a song on there called Fly. I just wanna fly.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, put your arms around me, baby. It was like a real, like, kind of like just a mellow, like,
uplifting
kind of, and that's what put them on the map. And it got really popular. That so then all their albums started to sound like that song, and then they had all these, you know, every morning or whatever that one. Every morning there's a halo hanging. Yeah. So I mean, they got all these like. So I mean, a lot of people are like, oh no, they sold out. Because they're like, all right, this hard rock stuff not selling.
Yeah.
This Fly song, everybody loves it. Let's start doing that. And they did, and it worked for them financially. They blew up. They started selling albums all over the place, featured on soundtracks, the whole deal. But then you got bands like, people always cite, like in punk rock circles, like Green Day or The Offspring, and they say, oh, they all sold out. They sold out. I go, okay, so Green Day released Kerplunk, which was their second album. Then they released Dookie, which was their mainstream. That's when they got huge, got big success. And I always challenge people, okay, listen to Kerplunk and listen to Dookie. You tell me what's changed musically. Nothing. It's still snotty punk rock. It's still the same thing. Now, they changed their style later on, but that was after they were already huge, right?
Yeah.
They were huge by the time they changed. So it was like, that to me, that's not a sellout. I'm like, just if you can make money doing what you love doing, more power to you. I think that's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, no, I don't feel like that. That doesn't usually fall into play for me. It doesn't really matter to me how popular a song is, except maybe that it gets overplayed and I hear it too much. That's the only danger there. Like because there's been times where there's a song I just love when I first hear it, and then it's literally every time you turn on the radio, it's on. And you're like, oh my gosh, are there any other songs in the world that you can play? Like, you're always playing the song, and then you get sick of it.
Yeah.
But even then, I'll just stop listening to the radio for a while, and then years later, I'll come back, listen to that song. Oh, it's a great song. It's still a great song. Yeah,
put it on ice for about 2-3
exactly,
years.
Right? It's
5
just
years.
it's just overkill, and I think that can be true of anything. There's very few bands that I can listen to nonstop without getting sick of.
And I concur with pretty much everything you said. Because I was funny. I was thinking of older bands or actual I shouldn't say actual, but the ones that are like humongous in the world and history, which instantly it came to mind with the Beatles.
Oh yeah.
So if social media was alive then and people were allowed, or not allowed, but were able to express their ideas and opinions like how we are on this podcast then, and just share it no matter where it goes, right? Someone could be listening to this in Japan eventually.
Yeah.
Who knows? You never know.
Right.
I wonder if like Twitter existed then, Instagram, whatever social media platform, if people would be like, oh, well, we love Paul McCartney and John Lennon's style of writing here, but they're effing sellouts now because they're doing like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Band is like way off the track from like Beatlemania. So I find that very ironic because like how you're saying, it's like, were they doing it to make more money? Possibly, or most likely. Right. But, and specifically with the Beatles, I think it was more so that they were trying to change. They were purposely trying to change it up to do something different. Right. That's fine.
Because it gets boring.
Yeah.
And I was trying to put myself, if I'm in a band, do I want to keep playing the same kind of music or do I want to stretch? Do I want to like expand my musical? Like that's why I appreciate when bands do that. It's like, hey, you know what? Let's drop a hip hop album. Yeah, the last one was death metal, but hey, let's try something different. But the fans just get like, you know, and I understand that too, because like if you hear their first album, like, oh, I love this album, I'm so excited for their second one, and the second one comes out and you're like, what is this? This sounds nothing like the first one, and it's a shock to your system. But the band's going, dude, this is our experimentation. We want to experiment, you know? Yeah. So I see both sides to it, you know? And I think for the Beatles, they started off like, they were probably the first boy band, right? They started off with the, she loves you, yeah, you know, like this kind of like poppy stuff. And then you get into like, Sgt. Pepper and Revolver and, you know, Abbey Road and that kind of stuff. It's more psychedelic, kind of drug induced. Yeah, exactly. So... But to me, it's all great. I mean, I love the Beatles. I can listen to their poppy stuff from the early 60s, and then I can listen to the last stuff they put out. I'll listen to John Lennon, Paul McCartney, solo stuff, George Harrison, all those guys are fantastic, you know? So, I don't know. But you're right. That's an interesting thing to say, because if social media was a thing back then where information could travel as quickly as it does now, what would that have been like? You know, would they have been tearing stuff down and be like, "Well, what is this new Beatles album? This is crap. This is like nothing like the old."
And I think that's just human nature, right? I mean, we don't naturally like change. Right. We actually need routine, albeit you need to break from that routine to reset, to recharge. But when it's something like that, I mean, kind of like how you're saying, more poppy for their first albums, like, and I don't know if this is one of their first albums. This is probably more in the like late 60s, but like even Yellow Submarine was like poppy to me, like it wasn't like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Band where it's like LSD, like mixture of I know they like sampled like Indian riffs and stuff like that.
Because they started playing the sitar.
There you go. They were like in Nepal or something. Or
they went to with Maharishi, whatever. That one guy. They got a lot of the Beach Boys went out there too to meet. I think a lot of big names met with those guys back then. But so like Yellow Submarine was on Revolver, which was the album that came out right before Sgt. Pepper. So I mean, you can see the progression, and I think it's cool when they experiment, and then you get into like the White Album, and it's like way experimentation on that one. You got like, what was that? What that song was like 11 minutes long, and it's just like number 9. Oh yeah, number 9, number 9, number 9. It's like, what in the world? It's like, what are you doing? You know?
And I don't remember what song it was on that album, but there's this one where it's like how you're saying, it's like 11, maybe 9 or 10 minutes long. Maybe it's not 11. But it starts with like, it eventually gets to like a circus kind of music or sound to it.
Okay.
I wish I remembered the name.
Yeah, I'm vaguely remembering what you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it either.
But I appreciate what they did, because that set the stage for every other artist. Yes. And it's not just musically or compositionally from the lyricist standpoint. It's from like the experimentation of like the melodies, like cutting things, like producers. Like I think of like Rick Rubin, like he's still around, and he was doing things with a lot of those early bands.
Amazingly.
Actually. Yeah.
How is that guy still alive?
I don't know. That guy's a genius.
Yes.
That guy's a true genius.
I mean, he's been working with so many different genres of music for how long? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. I think he even worked with Johnny Cash, actually.
Probably. Yeah.
So he's done every genre, and that's what's cool. I could appreciate when people could do, like, albeit if you're like a connoisseur of a certain like thing or in music, a certain genre. Right. I appreciate if you're a master of your craft with that.
Sure.
But with Rick Rubin, he just did it across the whole spectrum.
Right.
So that's cool that
Well, and then the fact he could take any genre and just make it sound good.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's a talent, right? That's not something. I mean, yeah, you can go to school for that; it'll help. But I think you're just born with a natural ability. It's like people that can sing. It's like you're just born with that voice. Like, yeah, you can do vocal. You can go to vocal teaching, right? But then I know people that like they just don't even need it. They're just born and they just sing, and it's like, oh my gosh, how are you doing that? I don't know. I've always been able to do this, right? It's just a natural thing where it's nuts. But
so do you truly believe, going off that it's not so much that you could practice and get to that point? It's more like you're born with it and it's fate.
In a sense, yeah. I mean, I think it's both. I think of people like Freddie Mercury from Queen, who obviously has one of the best vocal ranges in all of musical history. But he did extensive vocal training. I mean, he had vocal coaches that were. But to say that he was born with no talent. And he's singing, he's like, oh, and then he does 10 years of vocal training, and now all of a sudden he sounds like the Freddie Mercury we know.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. There's no way. Like, you cannot take a person who just sucks at singing and make them good at singing. Like, you can make something good better, is the way I would say.
Okay.
Like, you can take somebody's natural, it's like with anything. You can take somebody's natural sports ability. Some of these basketball players, Michael Jordan was born with a natural ability to play basketball. But the more he practices, the more he plays games, the more he's on the Bulls and he's playing the NBA, he's getting better and better, right? Because you're practicing, you're getting better. But I was not born with those basketball skills. I could go to all the same trainings Michael Jordan went to, all the practices, and there's no way I'm going to be in the NBA, right? I just don't have that natural ability that he had, you know.
I mean, and that's a fact with me too. I mean, and that's an example that many people bring up when I talk about this kind of thing. It's like LeBron James. Like,
yes.
His athletic ability, he's a freak of nature.
Oh, totally.
But he has to practice and get better at his craft to become world class.
Yeah, he's got to stay in shape. He's got to eat the right foods. He's got to exercise. You know, he can't just, And
I guess to get it back to like what the point I was trying to make, because I was actually trying to make a point on that. I've read like I was telling you when I first got here, when I saw your collection of books.
Yeah.
I started reading more this year because when I was in high school and in college and in uni, they assign books, and then they're suggested, which I doubt many choose to do the suggested readings.
Right.
But I'm like, okay, well, I have to read this because I have to.
Right.
To pass the class, to actually learn the principles and fundamentals you're trying to teach me. So then I kind of hopped off it, and when you're navigating adulthood in your mid-20s, you're trying to just be an efficient, good worker, and then also trying to be a good person out in society, right?
Sure.
But I got back into reading, and like I said, I was reading a lot of like finance and self-help books, which I still appreciate and still read, but it's just, like I was saying, once you keep reading the same topic over and over again, they're just kind of reiterating what they've already said, even if it's not the same author or no relation whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I was reading this one that my boss actually bought me. It's called Outliers.
Oh, Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, by Gladwell.
Yeah.
And my boss was talking to me about this, and he's like, to your point, like with LeBron James, there's some people out in this world that it is their fate and or the way they were just born, they were going to be who they were going to be. LeBron, he's 6'8".
Yeah.
He's naturally supposed to be an athlete, whether it was going to be football.
Yeah.
It was going to be basketball.
Yeah.
Something, he was going to do something with that.
Right.
That God-given ability.
Right.
But on the reciprocal of that, I see in business, in music, in soccer, which that's like a global sport, which I've never been a soccer fan, believe it or not.
kind of boring.
I can't watch that.
It's fun to play, but it's boring to watch.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's always. I feel like that's the case in many of those things. Honestly, it's kind of hard to watch baseball for me nowadays.
Yeah,
9 innings is a lot. Man.
Yeah, it's more nostalgic watching baseball for me because I grew up watching it with my grandpa. But I don't watch it today. I'll watch it if it's on at Ricky's or something. But
I didn't even watch the World Series.
I didn't.
I think I watched like part of one game when I want to go get something to eat.
Right.
But the book just talks about how, to your point, someone like the Freddie Mercury example about him like having a horrible voice, and he didn't have that. He obviously sounded insanely good.
Yeah.
But I do sometimes go to what Gladwell was saying, where if you put in enough work, maybe you will never be a LeBron James. So like your height will affect you becoming a basketball player. Yeah, I believe that.
Sure.
I don't think I could even put 10 years of effort in and I will ever be in the NBA. That's just a fact.
Right.
That's real.
Well, you look at somebody like Muggsy Bogues or Spud Webb. I don't know if you remember those guys. Are back in the 90s, but they were. I think Muggsy Bogues was like
5'6" or something.
He was like 5'2", I think.
Really?
He was short, man. I think Spud Webb was like 5'7", 5'6", 5'7", but I want to say Muggsy Bogues was like 5'2".
So one was on the Hornets and one was on the Hawks, right?
Yes, Muggsy Bogues was on the Hornets.
Okay.
And and Spud Webb was on the Hawks. But Spud Webb won the dunk contest one year.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously, it's like that's my point in bringing those two guys up. If you're born with that stature, I would think that you have to work a lot harder to get into the NBA, right? Your skill level has to be at a higher level than somebody who's 7'2". Somebody who's 7'2", just the fact that they're 7'2" is going to give them, the scouts are going to want that person. It's, he's uncoordinated, he can't really shoot, but hey, he's 7'2", let's get him in there. Yeah. Because just to have a guy that towers above everyone else like that is going to be beneficial.
Everything, block shotting, shot
sure.
blocking, sorry. And to your point, when you brought up Spud Webb and Muggsy Bogues, same thing that happened with Nate Robinson. He also was a slam dunk contest winner.
Right.
He was 5'8", so I think he was like my height.
Yeah.
But I think to Gladwell's point, they were the outliers, and what was it in their lives that made them the outliers and still be successful? And it probably had to be that, like the environment they grew up in, what they did every day. They were probably balling from sunrise to sundown. They didn't care about school. Well, and I'm just assuming, right?
Right.
Because what Gladwell talks about is he talks about the Beatles, actually.
Oh, really?
And how they were kind of like really not known, even in the UK. Like, no one knew who they were.
Yeah.
They traveled to, if I'm not mistaken, Germany or a couple other countries a lot to do concerts. And it was just kind of by happenstance or chance that they started performing like at strip clubs and bars.
Oh, yeah.
And Gladwell quantified how many hours they put in before they became what they were at the Beatlemania point.
Right. Well, it wasn't until they came here that happened.
Yeah, and that's
like that didn't happen in the
States.
UK, right? Until they came over here, but yeah.
And they had put in, after he quantified how many days, hours, which I know this is very technical, but I just find it very interesting.
Yeah.
Over 10,000 hours they put in.
Right.
And I think that there are those situations where you can maybe not be the greatest singer, but you still have a little bit of it in you when you're born.
Sure.
But then you put in that practice, and you can become that.
Right.
And it's the same in business.
Yeah, well, and so the funny thing, too, that I always find fascinating is there's so many singers, famous singers, popular singers of bands, that in and of themselves, their singing isn't good. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you look at like a band like Nirvana, right?
Yeah.
Now, if Kurt Cobain, let's say if there was a show like American Idol or The Voice or something back before Nirvana, before all this, and he gets up there as a soloist to sing a song, and he's not going to make it very far at American Idol, right? Simon Cowell is going to X him right off the stage. Be like, you sound crappy. But you take what he does vocally and you mix it with the songwriting and the sound of Nirvana, fantastic. Love it for what it's doing. Right, but you don't. Nobody sits there and goes, "Man, Kurt Cobain, he sings like an angel. He's just got the most beautiful voice I've ever heard." No, but with that, yes, and I think there's so many bands that are like that. They just sound good. Or you look at somebody like I don't know if you remember Beck. Do you remember Beck? He's still around, but like when he first came out, "Loser" was a big song. Yeah, I'm a loser, baby. So I heard that first song, and I mean, he's like rapping, but he doesn't have the best voice. But it was so unique and strange that it worked, and he blew up.
Yeah.
And then later on, he started writing actual like singing songs where his voice has gotten a lot better over time. But it's like, how does a guy like that blow up overnight? You know what I'm saying? So I guess the whole point I'm making is like, anybody, there's an audience for anything.
Yeah.
Like you could be the kind of person who just loves to sing, and you are singing all the time, and all your friends are like, dude, shut up, you sound like crap. Your parents are like, son, try something else. You're not going to go anywhere with this music. You just don't have the ability. But if he keeps going and he's like, no, this is my passion. I just love singing. I love singing. And then one day he meets a couple other guys. They get to, hey, let's start jamming. Let's start writing some songs. They write one song and it gets to a radio station, and then somebody hears it, and then it blows up, and they got a record deal, and they're millionaires overnight.
Yeah.
And now everyone else is going, oh my gosh, that guy who we always told sucked as a singer, he's in a band, and not only that, but they got a #1 album on Billboard.
Yeah.
Like, what? And that happens. You know what I'm saying?
It does happen.
So it's just like, never, I always tell people, don't give up. Go for it. If it's your passion, you go for it, man. It's just
I think that happens and would you agree that happens more so nowadays
probably
than it used to?
Because the standard is lower.
Yeah. And that's so sad. Like the bar is so much lower now.
Right.
Like any TikToker, any Instagram model or lack thereof can become a millionaire nowadays.
Right. Which is cool in another sense. I love the idea of being able to take the record company out of the equation. Because for a long time it was only like, we only got to hear the music that the record companies and the major labels would let us hear. They'd be like, oh, we're going to sign this band. We're going to push them and promote them. You're going to see their faces everywhere. You're going to hear all their songs in every store you go into. And that's how we learned those bands. Yeah. Where all the time there's all these other bands that are fantastic that we're never going to hear. Why? Because they're playing a club that's thousands of miles away from us. The only people that are going to know about them are the local in that town. But now, through internet and social media and stuff, this band can record themselves playing and just broadcast it to the world. Yeah. And then by word of mouth and people spreading it across the internet, they can become internet sensations. Then the record labels are going to come to them and be like, hey, we heard you wanted to sell them. And they can be like, no thanks. We're doing just fine on our own. We don't want to give you an 80% cut of what we're making, right? So, I think it's both good and bad in the sense. But I think you're right. The standard has gone down a lot, because like we were talking about rap earlier, and a lot of this, to me, and I know I hate to say this because I hated when my parents said this, oh, all that music sounds the same, right? Yeah. But a lot of the new rap, it's just like there's no chorus, it's just a beat, and a guy going, and the whole thing, and then the song's over. It's like, for me in hip hop, I want like a chorus where there's like usually like a female vocalist or something that's singing, or you have some of the rappers that can sing also, where they'll sing the chorus, or to me that's much more catchy, and it's got a hook and it's got all this stuff. I don't know, man. A lot of this, I'm not saying they're not talented, because that rapping they're doing is better than I could do. Yeah. But it's just, to me, the song is boring. It's just not fun to listen to. You know?
And I guess that goes back to your point, like, once you hear that same song over and over again on the radio, you're not going to want to listen to it. Well, if you can't even distinguish that this is a different track, this is a different person, they sound exactly the same, right? Then of course you're going to get tired of that genre, because they've all become or morphed into the same thing. Yes. That technique of like mumbling.
Yeah, mumble rap. Right, like exactly.
A thing now. Yeah. And I can understand from the perspective, like if I was at a club like in Vegas, or any other club for that reason or matter, I could see why you'd want those BPMs up. Yeah. Like, like I want to dance. Because you want to dance, right. I want to drink a little. Like,
nobody cares what the music or the lyrics sound like or anything. It's like, who cares?
No one cares what the heck they're saying. Right. As long as it's catchy enough and the beat's like getting you going, then that's it.
Yeah, for a rave or something, that's all you need. Yeah. Right? You just want something with a good beat.
That's it. And that's all it takes.
It could even be an instrumental.
Yeah.
You don't even need the lyrics.
That's a good point. Yeah. But to your point, like, and I don't know if, like, when I see the world through my lenses, if that's, like, for me, obviously, because I'm first person, that's my tell-all, be-all. But I can acknowledge and be empathetic to that everyone has a different opinion and outlook on life because of many different factors.
Right.
But when I talk to my friends about it, or to like Brighton for that matter, or anyone, I'm like, well, I want something with substance. I want something with actual technique and talent.
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
But to your point, it's like, oh, well, why don't you or me do that? Like, we could do that too, can't we? And I'm like, well, maybe I can't do that. So maybe that's why why they're on the radio and making millions and I'm not.
Yeah. But that to me, that's always such a bad critique. Like if I say something like, oh, this rapper sucks, and somebody's response is, well, can you do better?
Yeah.
No, I can't. But that just means we both suck. That doesn't mean he's good. Like just because I can't do it doesn't automatically make him good at it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just like, can you if you got a guy that can throw a 50-mile-an-hour fastball, which is slow, right? That's slow by today's standards. Yeah. And I say, oh, this guy's fastball sucks. And they say, well, Ryan, can you throw a 50-mile-an-hour fastball? No, I can throw about 30. Okay. Does that mean his 50-mile-an-hour is a good fastball? No, it just means we both suck at throwing fastballs.
Yeah, not to the standard of MLB, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, when they're throwing 100,
even AAA. I mean,
right.
And they're fighting tooth and nail every day just to get the shot to make it to that point.
Right.
So they're probably throwing harder.
Oh yeah.
In reality. Yeah. Or at least trying to.
Yeah. Blowing out their arm in the process. All right, so we're gonna wrap up the music thing, but real quick. This is the last thing I was asked to give me, and it could be some of the ones you've already mentioned, but just to give me your top 5 all-time favorite musical artists, bands, singers, whatever the case is.
So I remember reading about this. Okay. I could have swore you sent that.
I think I said it in the email. I like to kind of give you guys a little bit of a
and I don't want to cop out and just be like, oh well, like it's going to be anything and everything. So
right.
It's like just top 5 like artists.
Yeah, just anything. Yeah, top 5 like all-time that you would like to listen to.
So I'm going to start with country and the genre, and I'm going to try to see who I would really pinpoint. You know what? I'm going to go with the king himself. Even though Johnny Cash was considered the king at one time, and I do have an affinity for him and love for him, I'm not trying to backtrack where I was in the conversation with him. I'm actually going to go with George Strait.
Okay.
Because George Strait, his longevity, and he's still around. And I actually got to watch him 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah?
Last year, sorry. It's going on 2 years ago.
Yeah. He's been around forever, that guy.
In Vegas,
Nice. Good show?
That guy could sing.
Nice.
And he's 72?
Is he that old?
73? Wow. He's up there now.
Wow.
But he went on for 3 hours.
That's awesome, dude.
And he has a lot of hits.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of hits.
When you're around that long, you know, you could have probably enough greatest hits to fill 4 albums, 5 albums or something,
It's crazy. And I was scared. I'm going to be honest with you. And I told Camille, my fiance, and I told my brother, because my brother actually bought me that ticket with Camille. They split it because I graduated from Cal Poly last year, and that was my present for them.
Okay.
Like, we're going to go watch George Strait because they knew, like in modern times, because I can't go watch Johnny Cash anymore. He's gone.
Right.
But if it's in modern times, that was always the number one person I had not seen on my list.
And is Camille a fan too? Or
yeah. Oh, yeah. She loves country. Probably not as much as me with George Strait. I mean, I don't know particularly who she likes, but she just likes the whole genre of country.
Okay.
But yeah, I have been wanting to see him since I was a kid.
Nice. So it was a bucket list thing for you.
Yeah, because my dad had played George Strait as well. I mean, amongst all the other country artists I named.
Right.
And I got to see him last year.
That's awesome.
At AT&T, right across from Park MGM.
Okay.
He put on a show.
Nice.
But to the point I was trying to make, he had this young girl or woman, and she was getting up there, like on the pitch and everything.
She was like a backup singer, or she
was
like
the opener.
Oh, okay.
But it was just her before him. It was just
one opener.
her and then him, and that was it. It was one opener. But she sang for like an hour straight. Mm-hmm. She had a guitar. Don't know her name to this day. And I'm sorry to say that. Like for her,
maybe she'll get big.
Yeah,
and then you'd be like, "Hey, that's that girl."
Yeah. I'll have to look back. I'm sure I could just look it up on the internet who she was.
Right.
It's so easy to like look on the record now for the things like that, right?
Yeah.
Not like in the '90s. You're like, "Oh, who's that man?" Like, I mean, maybe if you go into like a library and look for a newspaper clipping, maybe.
Yeah, it was a lot more research back then. You couldn't just Google it or Wikipedia or whatever.
It's all at the fingertips now.
Right.
That's also made my generation more lazy as well.
Yeah.
But
all right, so we got George Strait.
Yeah, because He put on a great show, and
Okay.
because I've always had him.
Yeah.
2, well, I guess I could go to rap just to
Yeah.
keep it moving.
And these don't have to be in order of greatest. It's just
yeah,
five,
just like 5
that you like. Yeah. So rap.
Rap, I would be like Nas, like how
Okay.
I talked about.
Yep.
3 would probably be Frank Sinatra for me,
Okay.
and that's like the swing era.
I love your musical, like.
Oh, if you look at my Apple Music, man,
Spectrum.
like you're just
It's
like,
just-
oh, this is like all over the place.
That's so cool because that's the way I am too. Like I'll listen to a playlist that has all that stuff.
Yeah.
And people are like, how can you listen to a hip hop song followed by screamo, followed by country? It's like I love it. I
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
mix.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's what happens
yeah.
to me too. Like when I'm
it's
in
great.
the gym, like my brother's like, how can you be listening to this up tempo like rap song, and all of a
Right.
sudden listen to like slow like R&B, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like
Yeah.
I'm just paying attention to the song, and I'm still doing the workout.
There
like
you go.
That's the mindless effort of it. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
moving the body, but the song's really where it's at, and it's like
Yeah.
it's making my brain feel good because I'm listening
Right.
to that melody.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, so because we're talking about melodies and R&B, I'm actually gonna have to go with Usher for R&B because his longevity is still there and he's still performing. He's actually got a residency right now in Vegas.
Yeah.
So
He's been around since he was a little kid.
Yeah.
Remember the first time I ever heard of him was when he was still using his last name. He was known as Usher Raymond. And do you remember the movie Boomerang? Did you ever see the movie
I've
Boomerang?
never seen that movie.
It's good. You should watch it. It's Eddie Murphy. And it's there's a bunch of people in it, but I think it came in the 90s. But it's like Eddie Murphy's like the player of all players, right? He's like, he get any woman he wants. He's like Mr. Player. And then, do you know Robin Givens? You probably know who Robin Givens. Okay, so Robin Givens, she gets a job with him, and he's like smitten by her. Well, she's a player too.
She's older than him, though, right?
Oh, they're probably about the same age. I'm not
He probably
sure.
just looks better. aged
Maybe,
better.
maybe,
He
yeah.
looks the same.
Oh, yeah,
He looks
yeah.
exactly the same.
But anyway, it's a comedy, so it's funny. But like Halle Berry, it's one of Halle Berry's first movies she was ever in. Like David Allen Greer is in there. Martin Lawrence is in there.
So you got a lot of like the
there's a
people
lot
that
of
made
people.
it
In
big.
Chris Rock is in there. But the soundtrack is phenomenal. It's all that like '90s kind of R&B soul music and stuff. Like Boyz II Men's on there. In fact, End of the Road, that's where that song came from by Boyz II Men.
That's the first time they
It
ever
was
played
first on that soundtrack, and then they released it on, I think, their next album, but it first came out on that soundtrack.
Oh, man.
Anyway, my point is, Usher Raymond has a song on that soundtrack, and he's like a kid. He's got to be like 13 or 14 years old. I mean, he's little.
Yeah.
And he went by Usher Raymond. So I don't remember what the name of the song was.
I was going to ask you. I wonder if it's that
Yeah.
one where he goes like, "It's 7:00 on the dot. I'm in my drop top, cruising the streets.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh yeah."
I know the song you're talking
Yeah.
I
I don't remember the name. It's
Yeah.
funny, man. Like when you need to come up with like the answers for these things, you're like, I can't remember. But
Right.
well, anyways, I'm sure I'll figure it out later. But that's cool. Like you
Yeah.
had like a lot of those like big time stars,
Yeah.
nowadays stars, and they were all in that movie.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's funny.
Was it pretty like well received by critics?
I
or
think
was
so. I mean, I think so. I mean, it was, it was one of those kind of like, 90s movies that, I mean, I don't think it won any Academy Awards or anything, but it's funny. It's a comedy. It's, it's got a good story.
So it's a comedy.
It's definitely a comedy, but there's got some serious elements in it too. I mean, but it's good. So,
Okay.
all right. So we got one more coming here. We got George Strait, Nas, Frank Sinatra, and Usher. What do we got for the fifth one?
And I was like thinking about it by genres, so that's like helping me like interrelate who I would really choose. So that's like R&B, a little bit of swing, some country, and rap. Present day me wants to say someone like Elvis Presley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. All right. So then lastly, I'm really going to put you on the spot now. I'm going to have you give me, if you can, 2 to 3 songs from each of those people. That would be favorites of yours. So starting with George Strait.
George Strait, definitely Amarillo by Morning.
Okay.
All My Exes Live in Texas, because those are just like all-time hits.
Yep.
And one of his newer songs, actually, I'll go with Codiga.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Nas?
Probably Illmatic. like the whole album's just really
it's
freaking
hard.
good.
Yeah,
so
it's
I
hard
don't
to get
know.
away from it.
I'm just gonna go with this whole album.
Yeah,
man. On
that
that
works.
one I will do a cop out.
That's a good answer. That would have been my answer if somebody asked me that question, because you can't really.
I don't want to pinpoint anyone, honestly.
Yeah. All right, and Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra. I mean, Strangers in the Night's pretty good.
Yeah.
Fly Me to the Moon's an all time.
Yep.
And I don't know. I'm thinking between two different songs right now, but I'm trying to see what I'm feeling more of right now. Because that's all it is.
I'm just saying both.
It's just a feeling.
Just saying both. This is all just to go on the playlist for the episode, so that way people can check out songs. I don't know if you've seen that, but I actually put that in the descriptions.
Okay.
Of each episode is a playlist of songs that we talk about during the episode.
Okay.
Because someone had told me after the first season, they're like, I listen while I'm driving, and I don't have time to write down some of these bands and songs you guys are talking about. I want to check them out later. Is there any way you can make those available? So then I just started adding them to each episode in the description of. So in the description of your episode, it's going to talk about the topics that we talk about, and then it's going to say playlist for this episode. It's going to have all the songs that we've talked about.
So I saw the topic for the subject matter. I didn't realize that part.
Yeah.
So that's really cool, man.
Yeah, so it's cool. Yeah.
I was going to say, I believe this is the actual title of the song. It's called Summer Wind or the Summer Wind?
Yeah. Summer Winds. Yeah.
That one's really good. So I'll go with those three.
Cool.
I pinpointed it to that one.
All right. And then Usher?
Because there's a lot of his newer stuff that I like. But if I want to pay homage to what he first came out with, Usher. I guess I'll go There's some deep songs that he has that I really like.
Yeah.
But I don't really know if I want to pinpoint to that one. Can I actually look at my phone on this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Because, this one, I actually really want... If you're going to put this as a playlist, I would actually really like to put songs that, to me...
Well, I'll be sending you a message when I start editing the episode, too, asking for some other song topics.
I was going to tell you, I actually... At first, I didn't want to do the deep ones, but... So, one of them's called Simple Things.
Okay.
So, he's literally just talking about, life, and it's really the simple things that matter, not the materialistic or... really family.
Mm-hmm.
You Got It Bad for sure. And one other one. We'll do You Remind Me.
All right.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Elvis.
Elvis is also tricky because with him, I respect what he did during the Vegas era right before he died.
Yeah.
Though I don't really care for his music from that time period. I'm more of an early Elvis fan.
Right.
And I think that's more so what people think of it. I mean, I guess some people still dress for him at Halloween, when he had the crazy hair and
the white suit with the rhinestones on it.
But I don't really care for that.
Right.
So I'll do Don't Be Cruel.
Okay.
Suspicious Minds.
Nice.
And I do actually like the song Viva Las Vegas, but I'm not going to go with that one. I'll go with A Little Less Conversation.
Okay.
That one's good.
Nice.
That one's really good.
Cool, man.
I was asking you how much caffeine this had because look at how much this one has right here. That's a lot,
nice.
man.
Oh, Black Rifle.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of that company, or do you just like the coffee?
Well, the first time I ever had it, I was actually on the way to Kachuma Lake, and I stopped at that little market.
Okay.
On, I think that's Highway 46 or
Highway
154.
154.
154.
Yep.
And that little market had a Black Rifle.
Okay.
Espresso, just like this one, and it was raspberry mixed with something else.
Huh.
And they charged us a good amount of money, man. It was $6-7 for the can.
Wow.
And I just wanted to try it because I'm I don't really spend money like that on things, but I needed caffeine. And I didn't think anything of it. And then we shop at Grocery Outlet in AG.
Yeah.
And Camille got me this, and it was on sale. It was 2 for $1.
Okay.
So, yeah, I do appreciate it, this company. And I saw that it's, veteran-owned, apparently.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
So now that makes sense because I remember there was a cup at Ricky's that had Black Rifle. It said Black Rifle coffee on it. Huh. And I asked Brian, I said, is this yours? He goes, no. And he said, it's Camille's. And I said, oh, okay. Yeah, because it's veteran owned. It's conservative. It's,
in America, it's America's coffee.
Yeah, a lot of the podcasts that I listen to have them as a sponsor.
Always on sale at grocery outlet.
Yeah, I've never had it just because, like I said, I don't like coffee. But
yeah, well, dude, and honestly, like that's a lot of caffeine.
Oh yeah, that's like.
And the only reason I did it is because I just been like working a lot and doing a lot of stuff, and I was just like, man, like to me, to not be boring or at least have a good conversation, like I need to put a little caffeine in me.
A little extra, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do for work?
I'm an inventory manager.
Okay.
But coincidentally, or not coincidentally, it's just funny because whenever I tell people what I do, they always trip out. They're like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
I'm in the cannabis industry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But not
like at a dispensary or
we do manufacturing.
Okay.
So like we produce like edibles, we produce like vapes.
Okay.
And then we pre-package the flower that's grown at our farm in Camarillo.
Okay. So it's like your own company, or do you work for somebody else?
No, I work for someone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Glasshouse Farms, that's the name of our company.
Okay.
And we're publicly traded, actually. Not on the New York Stock Exchange, but on the Toronto Stock Exchange.
Okay.
Yeah, since it's obviously not federally legal here yet.
Right.
But 37 out of the 50 states it's legal now in some capacity.
Right. Well, and it's got to be it's kind of a new job opportunity, really, because of the vast legalization. It used to be you could only sell that stuff on the streets. Now it's like there's more of a market for it. So anybody that owns a dispensary or works at one, it's like that's kind of a new market. You know what I mean? Like
that industry as a whole, especially from like a recreational perspective, it's like 6 years old. So I mean, it's an entire new industry. I mean, obviously medicinally, like Colorado, California, traditionally it's been around for like 15, 16 years now.
Well, but then you have to get it prescribed by a doctor.
That's all. That's a whole different aspect and people going in. But it's interesting, man, because like my degree field at Cal Poly was ag business, which in a sense just is ag business.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I didn't actually like go out looking for a cannabis job. I was in strawberries, and I love strawberries because my great grandpa, he was a sharecropper when he came from Mexico here in the Santa Maria Valley. Well, AG, and then Salinas. And I worked for strawberry companies like Driscoll's, which you see a lot.
Oh yeah, Driscoll's. Yep.
You just see them all the time in the stores.
Yep. Well, we've been to the little stands before. We used to get the Driscoll's berries from.
Man, in Santa Maria, in the Santa Maria Valley, like in the 70s, 80s, like they still had them at the stands. They don't really even do that.
Right.
It's like Ukui that does that still, and like the Hayashis up in the Five Cities area.
Yeah.
But then I got into like ag tech, so it's like robotics and automation mixed with trying to help like the labor shortage in agriculture. And that didn't really work out because I was working for a startup, and I had worked for startups before, but the culture is just so much more different than like a corporate environment, which ironically I kind of like the corporate environment. I thought I was going to like the startup environment better.
Right.
And now I'm here. So I made my way back to the Central Coast.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's awesome. All right. Politics. You a political guy, or are you kind of like, who cares? You kind of.
I have a love for politics.
Okay.
And my views have changed immensely since I was a teenager.
If they didn't, I would say there's something wrong with you. I mean, all of our views need to change as we grow and we learn. Right?
And you would think, right? But you see a lot of people that they just don't change.
Right.
And that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, seems to be more and more prevalent with like our representatives that we have to this very day. Pelosi, McConnell.
Right.
They're not going to change.
No.
But I definitely keep up. I hopped off for a little while when I first got out of university to stay focused on my job. But as of recent, I've been more in tune.
You say hopped off, like stopped following, stopped watching the news?
I just stopped like reading articles, watching the news. I still don't watch the news, but I read more articles than anything. Okay. Yeah, and that's a multitude of different publishers. So like whether it's the Washington Post, New York Times, Fox News Business, Fox News. I don't read CNN articles anymore. I used to.
I don't think very many people do.
I used to. That's the funny part about it. So
yeah, they're strictly an opinion based.
Yeah.
You know, news. They wouldn't say that, of course, but that's really what they're doing. So, kind of, where do you fall on the spectrum? Would you say like right, left, conservative, liberal?
I grew up in a household where my parents never really told me their views, but you could see the influence and or like how it like where it derived from.
Yeah.
So initially, I would say I was more blue and a Democrat. As I got older, I then said, "Oh well, I'm an independent. Like I could see both sides of the argument." And then I just went full blown. I'm a Republican. I'm conservative.
You made the full switch.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was during Obama's presidency, actually, when I started like switching over.
Okay. I want to hear about what caused you to make such a, especially during the Obama administration. That's to make such a drastic switch, especially as such a young person. You know.
It's kind of funny because I used to really care about the national politics. I only knew all these people's names because like I followed what they stood for, what their opinion was on certain aspects, what bills they were on, what state they were representing. So like Obama, for instance, he was representing Illinois, and Chicago's like his place, which their politics are just trash.
Yeah. I would say so.
That's one part. I'm just like, okay, like, am I liking this guy for what he is about or what he's saying?
Right.
And I think I started to realize in high school, like, I like that Obama's a good speaker and he's professional.
Yeah.
But his politics don't make sense to me as I thought they did.
Right. You do realize that right there, that already sets you apart. Because most people would stop with, he's a great speaker. I love listening to him. He's just so eloquent and he's this. And they're just like, that's why I like him. For a lot of people, they don't get to what you're saying when you start actually listening to what he's saying. And you're like, oh, I'm not sure I agree with what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So that's a good thing that you're actually thinking.
And his successor is quite the opposite, right?
Right.
So Donald Trump, he doesn't have the most eloquent ways of saying things.
Right.
And yet, if you deeply look into his politics, they're logical. And this is what I'm saying. Like, I was a Democrat, then I was an independent, and now I'm a conservative.
Right.
And I think, but again, this is just an opinion or thought, that it comes down to logic. Like, what makes the most logical sense for communities, for states, for the country.
Right.
And a lot of the things that he was doing, so the action more than what he was saying, which more the media was more concerned about what he was saying.
Right.
What he was doing was good.
Yeah.
For the country.
Yes.
And whether it was border security, whether it was tax cuts for the middle class, which of course it also went to other people. So it went to the 1%ers or even the 1% of the 1%. But I mean, it has to be fair across the spectrum. So if business gets tax cuts, and the middle class should get tax cuts,
right?
And vice versa. I feel that's a true fair thing in free enterprise.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So one of the things that I've said multiple times on here, and I've gotten a lot of flack for saying it, but it's just true. I mean, I'm open to being corrected on this, but this is what I'm seeing in my own life: is that when I talk with, mostly, I'm not saying all the time, mostly when I talk with conservative minds. They're more logical. They're more focused on things like policy that, let's say, use Trump as an example. They're more concerned with policies Trump's putting in place, things he's doing for the country, how it's affecting our lives, to where when I talk to a liberal or a Democrat more, they're more like interested in kind of the emotional aspects of things, where it's like, oh, well, what Trump said, he hurt my feelings. I don't like that guy. To where a lot of people on the conservative side, like you and I would agree with everything you just said about Trump, where I'm like, I don't like him as a person. I don't think he's a good person. He's saying stupid things. He's being mean to people. Yeah. He's railing on people like he's in 5th grade sometimes, and I don't like any of that. However, I'm not as concerned with that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna rather have a guy in place that's doing the right things policy wise and is a jerk as a person than I am gonna have the guy who's the nicest guy in the world as a person, but it's crap on policy. But I've noticed that it seems like the Democratic side is more concerned
about emotions.
Exactly.
Emotions,
right?
And what traditionally a politician is.
Yes. Yeah. And then people have gotten upset with me and sent me emails and stuff, and they'll say, I'm so tired of you saying that, Democrats aren't logical. And it's like, hold on. I never said that. I'm not saying that the Democrats are a bunch of idiots that don't use their brains. What I'm saying is when they make decisions, they tend to lead more with their emotion than they do with their logic. To where the Republicans tend to lead more with their logic than their emotion. There's downsides to both of that. Like sometimes the Republican side can be so logical that they don't care as much about people, seemingly, right? They're not as empathetic. They're not as emotional, right? So I think we need to find like a both common ground, right? Where they both kind of fit together. So I'm not saying that the liberals are stupid, and nor am I saying that the conservatives don't care about people, right? It's like, I'm saying both, And
it's really interesting because, and then you get these images or videos of what's going on. And now I'm touching like border security again.
Yeah.
I just saw a video yesterday.
Yeah. Well, let's hit that. Let's hit that as a topic.
Near San Diego, where there was like 10 people that like, they're working on the wall again because Biden reestablished we need border security.
Which is hilarious.
And there was construction workers on our side putting up more fencing. And near, it's like the Tijuana part where you're like, like if you go in the ocean, you could just like swim across the other side. Right. Well, it was that portion, but they were working on the wall. There was 10 people that just like ran straight across. And the construction workers, I mean, they're not cops. They're not
trained to do that. Yeah.
They're just watching them and they're just like, wow, like this is truly happening in our country.
Right.
And what I supported that Trump did, and same thing, like I feel like I'm going to get heat for this, but I mean, I truly feel this is like, when he stopped people coming from the Middle East during that time in COVID, and when he closed the border and all that, like he did the right thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
And here's the thing, like you said, maybe when we're logical, it sounds like we're unempathetic to other people.
Right.
But I can truly say, like, no, I understand. Like, I understand a lot of people's train of thought. Like, they're coming here for a better opportunity the same way that my family once came here legally for the same reason. But that doesn't supersede the law of land. That doesn't supersede that you got to do it the right way.
Right.
If you're going to come over here by crossing a fence or lack thereof, are you doing it the right way? Like, can you truly tell me and look me in the eyes like, oh, I came here the right way?
Right.
I just don't subscribe to that idea.
Well, and you mentioned a while back, right, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your family is immigrants from Mexico, right? So your grandfather came over here, is that what you said?
My great-grandpa came in 1943 through the Bracero program, which was established by the United States to help subsidize the loss of labor during World War II, since we were sending all our troops to the Great Amphitheater through Europe and then eventually Japan to end it.
Right.
And that was, I mean, of course, like he's an immigrant, so like that was his way of helping America. He legally came.
Yeah.
I think that was still patriotic of him to do that.
Right.
And he paid his taxes.
Yeah.
And he established a family.
Right.
He taught them like, hey, you got to be a good person in society.
Right.
And of course, no family's perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say that we don't have our issues. We have our issues.
Right. But I mean, the point I always make here is that I think for me, I mean, obviously, my back family came from Italy at some point. My great grandmother came from Sicily, that whole deal. But like I look at it like from someone in your perspective, it's almost a slap in the face for someone who breaks the law, comes in illegally. It's a slap in the face to people that did it the right way.
Yeah. I
mean, because that's what America's all about. America's welcoming of anybody, but you got to go through the right channels. You can't just jump a fence and become a citizen. Like that's not how it works.
And I look at that from a multitude of perspectives because this is what gets me a lot about when I talk to someone that truly identifies as a Democrat and liberal to the far left.
Right.
They say, well, how can you say that? Like, you're Latino yourself and you're Hispanic. Don't you want better for your people? I'm like, yes.
Yes.
I do want better for my people.
Right.
But there's a right way of doing things.
Yes.
And to give like an anecdote in my life, me and Camille right now are currently saving for a house.
Oh, nice.
And I know I wanted to talk about economics, so I won't try to verge into that just yet.
Right.
But essentially, as you know, I mean, as most Americans are aware, inflation's really bad right now.
Oh, it's horrible.
Interest rates are high.
Right.
And the only way that I'm going to be able to afford a house right now is if I get to that 20% down payment. I can't do zero down. If I do zero down, my monthly mortgage payment's going to be insane.
Oh,
it's going to take up all my salary.
Right.
I'm not going to have anything left to even eat or commute.
Right.
Well, the Biden administration made a policy where to subsidize for people that have a lack thereof credit, the people with good credit are now going to be charged more when they apply for loans. And I'm just like, well, I'm doing it the right way, and yet I'm somehow paying for people that are not doing it the right way.
Yes.
Where's the incentive to do that?
Yes.
It's the same thing for me when it comes to that. Like, the incentive always was, you legally do this, you come to this country is made of different religions, made of different ethnicities.
It's beautiful. I love it. Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
And we're able to do what we're doing right now.
Right.
This isn't Russia. This isn't North Korea.
Right, exactly.
This isn't any of those other, what we consider radical countries.
Right.
And yet, for some reason, some way, like, probably during, ironically, a lot of people don't know that Obama did have, like, a lot of border policies that they didn't really know he was doing. Like,
of course.
He had detention centers. He had things that sent people back.
Sure did.
But it just goes back to that topic that I was saying. Like, it's a floodgate, and it's affecting everything. There's already a whole lot of people here, and call me, like, ultra-patriotic, but I'm America first. Like, let's focus on Americans.
Right.
Let's focus on people that contribute to society, pay their taxes.
Right, regardless of their ethnicity.
Regardless of their ethnicity. Doesn't matter if you're or race or anything. It doesn't matter if you're Asian. Doesn't matter if you're black. Doesn't matter if you're Hispanic. Doesn't matter if you're white.
You're American.
You're American.
Right.
That's what matters. Let's focus on Americans first. But we have to solve those issues to even get to solving our issues, which sucks. Because it's like, what are we going to do to address those issues?
Right.
And time and time again, like you're saying, we just have this with a two-party system, which was indoctrinated since the inception. Well, and it was a different way of thinking back then. A lot less of a population. The founding fathers, I feel like, they had a good sense of logic, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah, right? Yeah, especially coming from England, where they were under a monarchy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they knew what they didn't want. They didn't want the government to be so involved in the lives of the people, right?
Yeah.
Yes, making laws and that kind of stuff, but ultimately freedom, right? As opposed to a monarchy where the king says, jump, you say how high, kind of thing. They're like, no, people should be able to worship God however they want, or not worship God however they want. Like, they should be able to have whatever religious practice they want. They should be able to... Yeah, I mean, the idea of it is such a beautiful thing, and that's why I get so tired of people bad-mouthing the country all the time. And again, is everything perfect here? No. Do we have problems? Of course we have problems, but it's still the greatest place to live. And the fact that so many people are trying to get over here all the time is proof of that, right? I mean, they're coming from places that are worse than here, and it doesn't mean, again, that we're perfect or that we have all the answers. We don't, but it offers freedom. It offers, the possibility of anybody being able to start a family, start a business, make a name for themselves, or whatever, right? And it's frustrating when people get to that point.
It is.
But I mean, and back to what you were saying, or something that I thought of when you were saying what you're saying, is that the whole, I don't know what the word to really use, but the idea when they talk about, you said, people ask, don't you care about your people? Or don't you care about your people? And it's like, and I assume what they mean is other Hispanics, right? That's what they mean by that. But, and I don't think we should lose all that and say, oh, just all your culture's out the window. We don't care about it anymore. We're all going to adopt one culture and one ethnic. No, that's stupid. But when we come into America, I feel like we should all be Americans.
Yeah.
First Americans. That's the one uniting thing we have. You know, your family may come from Mexico, mine may come from Italy. Someone else's may come from Russia, wherever,
Germany.
right? Germany, all these other places, you know, Japan. We've got all these different, that's what we call America the melting pot. And that's such a beautiful thing that we can all gather together and be like, okay, now we're all Americans. Now, how can we work together to make this the best place to live? But there's so much division happening in the last 4 or 5 years, 10 years maybe, that it's bad. It's getting bad again. We're dividing over ethnic lines. We're dividing over gender lines. We're dividing over, you know, whatever, sexuality lines, all these different divisions that are taking place where it's like, oh, this side hates this side and this side hates this side and we can't get along and we can't fix it. It's like, come on, like, seriously, you know?
And it's insane that I feel that it's gone to the point where you hate that side simply because it's that side.
Yes.
It didn't used to be that way.
Right.
We had bipartisanship.
Yep.
Where you could walk across the aisle, get something done for the country. Didn't matter if you didn't fully agree with what you were doing. You had to suck it up to make sure that Americans prospered.
Yes.
And that's all I want for America. I
Focus
want prosperity.
on the whole as opposed to the individual.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because I can acknowledge, regardless of party affiliation, that there's a lot of people that are not doing what they're doing for the right reasons anymore. But, I mean, and that's a rabbit hole within itself. Could you say that it's always been like that? Or, like, if you go back 60, 70 years, that there's always been someone in someone's pocket? Probably.
Yeah.
But it's probably more so now than it ever has been. And I find it to be true in both the Democratic and the Republican Party, more so the Democratic Party than the Republican Party.
Right.
And I think that in the Republican Party, they have their states and demographics' best interest, whereas in these blue states, because the cities dictate what the state is, not necessarily what the state dictates what the city needs to do, you have these backward policies that don't make sense.
Yeah.
I've been to Kansas City. I'm going to Nashville in January.
Oh, nice.
And I asked myself, and I actually talked to drivers about this, and I don't like getting political because I know that it causes like a lot of division, and I don't want to change people's minds necessarily. Like, I know what I feel,
right?
And I don't want to necessarily put it on you that you need to feel the way I feel. But I do like talking to people, and I talked to the Uber driver one day in Kansas City, and I'm like, hey, like, I noticed like this is a beautiful city, like downtown's super nice.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any homeless people. Like, what's the reason for that? And he tells me, honestly, man, like, he's like, because I already told him I was from California. He's like, I know you're from California, but like things are run differently over here. Like over here, other than like mental health issues, which I guess can correlate to drug use, which that's that separate issue.
Sure.
There, you have no reason nor right to be homeless over here. Like, even though they make, I think, $10 an hour, $11 an hour, if you work hard enough, you can attain prosperity here in this state. You could get a house. You could have a good life.
Right.
He's like, me Uber driving you and you giving me a good enough tip, like, I'm going to be able to go get dinner tonight with my family.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
he's like, there's policies that invite people to take advantage of the system in other states where we don't do that.
No. And
I'm like, that doesn't sound political to me. That just sounds straight up.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But the two words you just said were work hard. That's what that guy's saying. He's like, no, we have a system to where if you're willing to work hard, you can live. You can live well. You can have a family. You can have a house. But there's so many people that they don't want to work hard.
Yeah.
Especially in California, right? That like they find the loopholes. It's like, I don't want to work. I just want to sit around and have the government take care of me. And if they don't take care of me, I'm going to complain about it and say that it's all these reasons, discrimination, whatever. No, it's because you're lazy. You know, and I understand some people have a disability and they can't work, and that's the kind of thing, if it's legit, that I think our tax money should be paying for, you know. But the problem is we have so many people that are lying. You know, I know people that have been on disability for a million years and they're not even, you know, they could work. You know, it's just like, but they're like, oh, I'm still hurt. I kind of like this, like, not working thing. You know, it's like,
I found that weird too. Because a lot of the time in the 5 cities when I'm seeing like there's particularly people that I could think of that I see all the time.
Right.
And even when I'm like riding with my grandparents, my grandma goes, "Man, that guy looks so young. Like, why can't he work?"
Right.
Like, and I asked my grandpa, because my grandpa, he told me, like, if you choose to give him money, that's for your own reason. If you choose not to, that's for your own reason.
Right.
And it's kind of weird because I've seen him do it. I've seen him do it and not do it. Like, someone's asked him, he doesn't give it. And then sometimes, for whatever reason, he feels that need to give someone that.
Sure.
And that's an issue too. That's a topic of conversation within its own right.
Right.
But the overarching topic or thing that they say is like, oh, well, why can't they work? Like, why can't they work hard to attain something?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And to your point, the outliers are mental health, some bad luck of the draw. But other than that, I mean, like, you're like drug use. You're choosing to do that.
Right.
This is a free country. Like, we have rights and responsibilities.
Right.
So if you do something bad, don't be surprised if there's bad consequences.
Yes. But that's the problem, right? So this is what I talk about with my older kids, that it's like we come to a place in society now where the generation is being taught nothing's your fault. There's always something to blame, whether it's your parents, your school, your friends, a disease, an addiction, right? There's always something to blame. It's not your fault. If you're addicted to drugs, it's not your fault. It's the drugs that are making you the way you are. Like, you have an addiction. You know, you need help. And they need help, don't get me wrong. But that's not an excuse. You're a drug addict because you did drugs and now you're hooked on them. That's your fault. Now it's up to you to get yourself out of that. I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah.
That's going to be a hard, long road, but it's doable. I know people that have done it. I know people that have been on drugs for years and years and years, got out of it, and have been clean for many, many years. I know people that have been severely dependent on alcohol and got out of it. You know, I know others that haven't. I know others that have gone back and forth. I know people that were clean for years, got back into drugs, you know, and it's heartbreaking when that happens. But I'm just so tired of this idea of like it not being that person's fault. Like we're empathetic, which is good, but we're so empathetic where we're not putting any accountability on anything, you know, and it's just it's horrible, you know.
It's interesting that you're talking about the people you know, because I actually have family members that were close to me that were on those paths. They even went to prison for that. And I've talked specifically to my uncle about it. I'm like, hey, so like, what were the reasons why you like did this? Like, I just really need to know. Right. Especially me, like, I'm a deep thinker. Like, I could get lost in my thoughts a lot of the time, and almost to a negative. So I choose not to anymore. I either talk about it with someone or I just try to cut it off. Right. And talking about it's definitely more efficient and a better outlet than just cutting it off. But I asked him, I'm like, hey, so like, what was your like need, or why did you ever want to do this? And it's just like, oh, like, he didn't really have a reason. He's just like, I just wanted to try it, and then I got hooked, and then I didn't care about anything, and it was like the devil. He was like, it was like horrible. Like, it affected his family, the economics of the family. It affects not just your direct family, but indirect. And I asked him, like, so like, what was it that made you clean? He's like, well, I went to prison, so I had to be clean. I mean, even in there, you could still get access. Right. But he chose that to his outlet to get clean. And it just goes back to your accountability point. It's like probably 99% have that choice. Maybe that 1% for whatever crazy reason didn't. Maybe they grew up in a family where like their parents were also drug addicts, so they were around it, so they started doing it. Sure. I don't really blame people like that. Right. But is that the majority? No, right. I don't think so.
Yeah, even if you can't necessarily blame them for being there. Let's say, I mean, even like back in, this doesn't happen as far as I know anymore, but back in the day, you used to hear stories of babies that were born addicted to drugs because their parents were on drugs. Yeah. I'm sure it still happens. Yeah. But you used to hear about it more in the news, you know. And obviously that's not their fault. They didn't choose to do the drug. But let's say they grow up and they're addicted to the drug and they keep doing it or whatever, right? And now they're addicted. Somebody might say, oh, that's not their fault. Maybe. But it's up to them to get out of it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. They still have a choice to make. They can either live the rest of their life like that and die young of an overdose, or they can get the help they need. Yeah. Which again, I need to keep saying this. I'm not saying that's easy. I've never been addicted to drugs. I don't know how hard that is, but I know people who have been. I've seen documentaries. I've watched stuff. I know that's hard. That's a hard thing to kick. I get it, but you only got two options.
And I think that's like where you interrelate that to the politics. Going back to the having to reiterate the empathy part. It's like, I've never had that feeling or affinity for drugs or alcohol either.
Right.
So like I don't know what it's like to be hooked to either one of those substances. Though by policy or people that are in power saying like, oh, well, you need to be more empathetic to that situation, so we're going to structurally do things to help them, but in reality you're not helping them. That's where I get confused. Kind of like the whole deliverance of needles, clean needles to drug users. It's like, well, is that really solving the issue?
Yeah, or even having what are they calling them? The sites now where they're designed for drug users, and they have all the stuff there, like you're saying, clean needles, clean whatever. And I'm not really sure what the point of that is. They're saying that the overdose rate has gone up since they've done that
because they're giving them more needles,
right? And they're shooting up right there in their little section that's been designed for that. They're still on drugs. They're still dying. They're still, I don't know.
And I've read that because one of the senators that proposed that and was backing that was Cory Booker from New Jersey.
Good old Cory Booker.
He was saying like, well, I understand this. He was saying it eloquently, so I'm not going to say it as eloquently as him.
Right.
But to say it in layman's terms, he was saying, well, I'm not saying this is solving the issue of like a drug epidemic or drug use.
Right.
But it stops people from using dirty needles, which is a whole separate issue itself. I'm like, yeah, but you're not really solving the problem that they're using needles or that they're drug users.
Right.
You're just solving what you see as like one of the first issues is like, oh, they could get like hepatitis or they could get some other type of like illness associated by that. But it's like, okay, but what's the cause? Well, you're using a dirty needle. That's the main issue.
Right.
It's not that, oh, like we have a shared needle, so we need just to give them clean needles.
Right.
It's like, why don't you just stop giving them at all?
Yeah, if they stop doing the drugs, guess what? They'll also stop using dirty needles. Right? That's a byproduct because they're not going to be using any needles if they're off the drugs, right? So
exactly.
So that way it kills both birds, right? It's just like, it doesn't make sense. I don't understand the logic behind that.
It really doesn't, and I don't know, and that's where I get lost in my thoughts, and then I say to myself, am I thinking radically or like to a point where I'm thinking of like conspiracy theories where like I say to myself, well, does the government want that? Do Democrats want that? Maybe to even some point, do some Republicans want that? Do they want to keep a certain amount of people down?
Right.
Keep some people up? I don't know. I mean, the more you're open to those possibilities and read things out there, you're like, well, this may have sounded radical to me at one point in my life or when I was younger, but as I become older and more jaded, I see like things differently now.
Right.
But not to say and get back from the point that like a lot of those people, it's just a decision they have to make.
Yeah.
And that's all it is.
Right.
Because like supposedly they're trying to offer more mental health services here.
Sure.
I haven't really seen much of that.
But even then, right? Even then, let's say you offer more mental health places that are fantastic. They're wonderful. Those people still have to make the decision to go there.
Yeah.
Right? There's nobody the government's not going to force them into that. Like they have to make a decision and decide, you know what? I don't like this life I'm living. I want help. Right? It's just like with anything, whether it's drug addiction, mental illness, whatever it is, marital struggles. Like you can be in a failing marriage and you can just say, all right, I'm just going to get divorced.
Yeah.
Or you can say, is there any help for me? Is there marriage counseling we can do? There's always that kind of a deal, but it all comes down to a decision.
Yeah.
And if somebody's already decided, no, I'm done. I'm done. Then what do you do with a person like that? There's no forcing them into anything. It's like they have to want it. So, I'm with the people that say we need more mental health places. And one of the ones I just did these a while ago, they're talking about how just getting more facilities that are designed to get people back on their feet, which is great. Give them clean clothes, give them a shower, give them a place to get clean, give them mental health if that's what they need, to rehabilitate them to the point that they can go back out in society and become contributing members of society again. I think in theory that sounds fantastic. That is exactly what needs to happen. But it's the practicality of it that I get caught up on, because you have to have people that are willing to do that. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? You can build all the facilities in the world. If these people aren't going to those facilities, it's not going to make any difference. You know? So
it's like that whole analogy. I mean, you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make it.
Exactly. And
time again, I'm with you. I'm not trying to say that I'm not in support of mental health facilities. I mean, man, like even to people on the surface that look like they have it all together. Oh yeah. We even need like a psychiatrist. We need people to talk to release these things.
Yeah, we all have our issues.
We all have our separate issues.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not here to portray it that I'm perfect or that anyone in my family's perfect. We're not.
Right.
But to your point, if you're going to spend the time, energy, and taxpayers' money to create these things, you better or make sure that they use it. They actually use it, first of all, efficiently, and it makes a difference.
Right.
Because if it makes no difference and you spent all this time, money, and energy to do that, and it made no difference, then what was the point of that?
Exactly. And then it's waste. It's wasted time. It's wasted money. It's wasted resources. Yeah.
And I guess, of course, like I don't have the answer. I really don't. Like it's a complicated issue, but I respect a lot of the past like presidents and politicians that were able to like move mountains and actually do things. I mean, I think of like Eisenhower, Ike. He made the interstate highway system. Yeah, and that's a structural thing, right? But it changed society. It changed the way that we're able to go from coast to coast.
Right. Still today, it still stands, right? It's still the main means of transportation.
And although this guy's a Democrat, FDR, with the New Deal, was able to create a Social Security system for our seniors, because a lot of them, unfortunately, can't just rely off of a pension, if they even have a pension, or anything else. They have to rely off Social Security Administration for them to just even live.
Right.
These different life-changing events for America at the time are still around, but we're not really moving forward anymore. We're just kind of like stuck on those things that you're talking about. Like, it's more about being sensitive to the situation. Like, it's okay to do all these things. But, like, I get it. Like, empathy is a good thing.
Yes.
But let's be empathetic and move forward. Right. Let's not just be stuck on the issue constantly.
Right.
And time again, to your point, it's been like that for the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And it's just getting worse.
Right.
So.
Yeah, man. So a couple things I want to go back to. I know you've talked about wanting to talk about the economy. I know we've touched a little bit on that, and we'll close with that. If you have anything more to say on that, but you mentioned the two-party system. Are you for that, or do you think we should abolish that and get something different going?
That's such a hard question. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but at one point in time, it was the Democratic Republican Party, like during the birth of this nation. It wasn't just
and then you had the Whigs, and you had the
Whigs, the Federation or Federalists.
Yeah,
you had Federalists.
Yep.
I guess there's always pros and cons to having more. And I know that there's a lot of people that try to dabble in politics at the national and local level.
Right.
The Libertarians tried to do it. Yeah. The Green Party.
Yep.
But it's all derived from fundamentals or principles that started with red and blue, which at one point were called something different. Right. I think a two-party system is fine. What's not fine, though, is that they're both so close-minded now on each side. Right. That, again, we're not making progress.
Right.
And I think that would be my answer.
Yeah,
honestly.
they're just polar opposite, and it's just, and it doesn't seem like either side, at least when you get deep into that side, is willing to budge. Yeah, that's why you have all these fights going on in Congress where we're trying to get this spending bill for this, and there's other sides saying no, and a lot of times you can tell it has nothing to do with the bill itself, and it has to do with the fact that this team wants that. I hate that team. I'm not going to give that team what they want. It's like, how old are you people? Like, you're acting like just little kids, you know? Like, I'm not going to give you what you want because I don't like you and you hurt my feelings, you know, or you did something I don't like. It's like, oh my gosh, people, come on. Yeah, and I don't necessarily like the two-party system, but I can't think of a better thing. Like, in other, just to tear it all down and start over and just be like, okay, there's no parties.
Yeah.
Just be like, this is John Carter and this is Wendy Smith, and they're running for the office. They're going to tell you what they think and what they want to do for the country. You choose who you think would better represent what you want. You know,
that sounds more logical.
There's no Republican, no Democrat, no Liberal, no Green Party. It's just like, they're people.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, we could do that. But it's like people get. I think a big part of it is people are lazy. They don't want to. They don't want to listen to the speeches. They don't want to look into the voting records and look at, like, actually study these humans that are potentially going to lead the country. They'd rather just be like, oh, I've always voted Democrat. I've always voted Republican. Who's the guy? Oh, that guy. I've never heard of him. But is he Republican? Okay, yeah, all right. Check the box right here. Sign the name. It's like. Yeah, but what if he's a moron? What if he doesn't know what he's doing?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, he's Republican. I'm like, that's stupid. That's just dumb.
And that's where, like, that's why that was such a hard question, because I just see, like, to your point about the laziness, if you make it that it's no longer a two-tier party system and it's like multiple, which I already named, like libertarians and green parties, but there's such a low subset.
Yeah, they almost don't even count. That's what I was gonna say. It's like we really don't have a two-party system, but we do have a two-party system. We don't have a system that says there's not allowed to be any other parties.
Yeah,
we just have a system when there are other parties, they're so insignificant that nobody cares.
Yeah,
like it doesn't matter.
Well,
right?
And their principles derive from those two major ones.
Sure.
They just went off a little bit on certain issues,
right?
To where they say, well, we're not going to classify ourselves as that. We're going to classify ourselves as this because this is the one main thing that we don't agree with them.
Yes.
So this is why we are our own party.
Right. It's just like religion and all the different denominations where they're like, we believe something a little bit different, so we're going to become the Presbyterians, or we're going to become the Baptists, or whatever. Right? They have all these offshoots that are all studying the same book. Yet they have different denominations.
The iteration's just a little bit different.
Yes.
Where they classify themselves.
Yeah,
differently.
all the same core beliefs are the same, except they have little tiny things that are different. So therefore, they start a whole new church.
Yeah,
you know, it's just like, okay.
And that's what I'm saying. So like, it becomes convoluted at that point. But I guess that's just also the conservative in me saying that, because I'm not saying like, oh well, let's just keep it the same.
Right.
But then you're like, well, but then how do we fix anything if we can't?
Right.
If we can't agree on anything with those two same parties.
Right.
And I don't have the answer. I mean, maybe some of it does have to do with who's in office.
Yeah.
The age of those people in office.
Yeah.
Should Pelosi still be there? Should McConnell still be there?
Right.
No.
Right.
They should not.
Yeah.
And
well, McConnell's not going to be there much longer. I don't think. He keeps having those episodes. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
He's just zoning out.
Where, like, you think he's having a stroke?
Yeah, he just stops talking at mid-sentence. It's like, Mitch, are you okay, buddy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, are you having a stroke?
Yeah.
You have Alzheimer's?
Yeah.
And
which is normal for these age groups.
Yeah.
Right? This is normal things that happen to people that age. It's not like it's weird. It's just that they're in the public eye. They're in the Congress. It's like, you're too old.
And that's not me, like, digging at them.
No.
Like, trust me, I could dig at them in personal ways.
Right,
That's just like, this is what the American people are observing.
Right.
And I guess that goes back to that whole construct of where I said America first.
Yeah.
Like, we're kind of a laughingstock to other countries right now.
Yeah.
Because of leadership.
Yep.
I mean, as you know, the Republican Party barely elected a Speaker of the House again.
Right.
And
took them a while.
Yeah. It took them a while.
Yeah.
But within their own party, there's a lot of bad stuff going on from the inside out.
Yep. That we're never going to know about because we're not on the inside.
No,
right?
we're not.
We can have theories about it and stuff, but yeah, it's crazy. All right, well, let's go to the economy real quick. If there's anything else that you want to kind of make a point about, or I'm sure you started to a few times. I probably went some other direction with you, and you didn't get really to make your point. So
I just the one thing when I thought about talking about the economy, and it's because it's affecting my personal life. So like, that's why I wanted to bring it up. Is just how crazy this environment is currently with inflation and what the Fed's doing. I don't really agree with what the Fed is doing in terms of raising interest rates. at the highest point in 22 years.
Yeah.
What Fed Powell has said is that the reason why he's raising interest rates so rapidly, albeit the last 2 meetings they stuck to the reserve rate, which is 5.5 at their end. But then if you get a quote from like a national bank, you're getting like 8.5, almost 9%.
Oh yeah.
For like car loans and mortgages.
Right.
He says, and the Federal Reserve says that, hey, we're doing this to fight inflation, and yet I say to myself, how is that putting the interest of Americans first and the economy? Because I don't know if you heard the recent report, but the GDP growth actually went up as of recent.
Wow.
So that means that their supposed fight on inflation isn't working. And we were already a thriving economy before they started going from 3-4% all the way we're at right now, 9%.
Right.
And what makes me really sad about that, besides my own personal issues with buying a home, is it's not just affecting me buying a home, which is a huge thing in my life right now.
Right.
It's affecting every American in a multitude of perspectives. Groceries are up.
Yeah.
Gas prices are up. Healthcare is up. All these things that are up affects people's bottom line. And you have a family. I have my family, which is just me and my significant other.
Right.
I can't imagine right now having a kid or even 3 or 4 kids and raising them in this environment from an economical perspective.
Yeah.
It's like, how do people do it?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Like, we're at a point now in time where 6 figures in California is not what 6 figures used to be 20 years ago.
Right.
And I just find I find the whole thing very strange that the Fed is doing this right now to fight inflation, but yet you're still hurting Americans and the economy is still roaring. So what actually is happening?
On? Yeah.
What is the goal here?
Right.
Because if you continue to raise interest rates to what they were in the 80s when they were 15, 16, 17%, I mean, you're just going to lock out everyone at that point, unless you're a 1% of 1%.
Right.
I'm not even saying a net worth millionaire. I'm saying a billionaire is the only person that's going to be able to do things.
Right.
And that's going to change society completely.
Right.
I mean, you already have companies like BlackRock that own a lot of the real estate, commercial, and single-family homes in America. That doesn't sound very American to me.
Right.
That sounds very monopoly, dictatorship to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I guess I feel so strongly about it and I'm opinionated about it because I'm in the certain situation I am now.
Sure. Yeah.
But I'm sure a lot of Americans are also feeling like, what happened to gas prices?
Yeah.
What happened to groceries?
Right.
What happened to healthcare?
Right.
What happened to my $20 not even being $20 anymore? It feels like
it's all Trump's fault, as they keep telling us.
Yeah.
It's all
they have to blame someone, right? They have to blame someone.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, it's Trump's fault.
Right. Right.
Like,
yeah, and buying a house, I mean, that's one of the things, I don't know if you remember, because it's bad all over the country. It's not like buying a house anywhere is easy. But California is one of the worst states to do so in. And I don't know if you remember when they were doing the recall for Newsom, and they were having a recall vote. Well, the guy that was, the main guy that was going against him was Larry Elder. I don't know if you know anything about Larry Elder. I love Larry Elder. I think he's fantastic. I also think it's hilarious that people will call him a white supremacist. It's like, you guys know he's black, right? Yeah, we know, but he's acting like a white supremacist. What? Do you even know what that means? Like, what are you talking about? But it's basically that he's not supporting their traditional values, right? They don't like that. But he was talking that was a big part of his platform, was making it affordable to own a home now, to live on. You know, everybody talks about a living wage, and I think a living wage is something that should be happening when you've been at a job for a while. I don't agree with those that say a living wage is what you should have when you first start at Taco Bell on your first day. You should be able to buy a house, and it's like no, you got to start somewhere. But the problem is we have so many professions and people that are in jobs that have been there for a long time, and they work hard and they do a good job and they learn the trade and they're very, very skilled. And they're still not making a living wage. That's a problem. Yeah. So that was one of the main. I mean, I love lots of what Larry Elder had to stand for, but that was one of the main ones that I was like, dude, if we get this guy in there instead of Newsom, it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
But it's going to hopefully slowly start to be like, okay, let's get this economy going again and changing interest rates and getting the stuff going where someone who's got a good job and has been working there can support his family or her family and by being able to make a house payment, buy a house. Because they're building houses all over the place. Right? Every time we look around, there's a new housing development. There's, building new houses, building new condos, new apartments, whatever. Who's living in these? Nobody can afford to live in these things, yet they keep building them. It's like these companies are going to want to sell houses, right? So it's a win-win for everybody if we can get it to where people can buy houses. And again, I'm not saying that the 16-year-old kid should be able to buy a house, But, someone like you is 25 who, let's say, I don't know how long you've been at your job, but let's say you've been there for 5, 6, 7 years. Now you're getting ready to get married. You're going to start wanting to have children. I think you should be able to buy a house, settle down, get your finances in order, start having a family. But for a lot of people, you just can't do that here. No. Or your wife has to work. Also, maybe 2 jobs. Maybe you have to work 2 jobs, and now you're having kids. And it's like, oh, this is great. We can afford the house payment. But I never get to see my kids. Yeah. Or we're never all together as a family because either wife's with the kids while I'm working and then we see each other on the way out the door. Me and my wife did that for a while. I come home from my work. She'd be on her way out the door. Give her a kiss. See you later. See you later tonight. She'd go work at the steakhouse. She'd come home at 11 o'clock at night. Kids are already in bed. So it's like she would be with the kids all day. I would be with the kids in the evenings. But it was hardly ever where all of us were together at the same time, And it's just like that's such a detriment on so many levels because now... you look at the way the kids are being raised now, the things kids are into now, a big part of that is lack of parental involvement. And sometimes it's not the parents' fault. It's like, look, we have to work all the time or else we have no food. We don't have a place to live, right? That's
quite, like literally the idea of living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly.
And even then, it's not enough.
No.
If you go over your expenditures.
Exactly. So, yeah.
And that's just sad because what you just described is that whole saying where it's like you're alive, you're breathing, but you're not living.
Yes.
You're not.
Correct.
You're just living to work.
Yep.
And I guess working to live.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. You're alive in the sense that you have food to eat, you have a bed to sleep in, you have air to breathe, and that's it. Yeah. And even right now, I'm by no means in dire straits. I mean, I know people that are really struggling, but I mean, I guess I can only speak on my own experience. Like right now, I'm just working 2 nights a week at the pizza place. It's rough because it's like there's so many things going on to where I'll work. I'll work at the library. I'll come home for an hour, maybe enough time to change my clothes, get a little quick something to eat, see my kids for 20 minutes, then I'm out the door. And then I get home, it's time for their bedtime. Yeah. So it's like, it's hard. And I know that there's people that do that every day. Yeah. And they literally maybe have 1 day a week where they see their kids. Like maybe Sunday they have off every week. And they're like, all right, this is family day. And this is the day that I get to see my wife and my kids. And it's like, that sucks. Yeah. Like, I just don't think it should be that way. I think it used to be that, like, the family would work together. Like, let's say they owned a farm or whatever. They had something going on. They're like, okay, this is cool because we're working all the time, but at least we're together. We're on the property together. We're working the field. We're working the land.
Valuable lessons learned.
Yes, exactly.
You're talking.
Exactly.
You're learning about your family history.
Yes, you're spending time together.
Moral compass, ethics, values.
Right.
Whereas, to your point, if you're going from one job to the next, it goes back to that whole point you're trying to make about there's a lack of the parent there, but it's not because you're choosing to be not there.
Correct.
That you don't want to be here.
Yes.
It's that you have to go do things and sacrifice for your family, your household.
Right.
In order for them to,
I
don't even want to say prosper, but just to make it.
Yes.
To live.
To eat.
To
sleep.
To have healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like
that's
a huge
another
one
big
too.
one here. Yeah.
That's something that comes out of my check that makes me also question the system.
Yep.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
It's like, here, we'll take, $1,000 out of your check, and even when you have an emergency, like I have insurance through my job, and I've had a couple surgeries I needed. Some were emergency. Like I had my appendix out. That was an emergency surgery, right? Yeah. And it was like, we still had to pay
a copay.
Like $7,000 or $8,000, and I'm like, who has $7,000 or $8,000 just laying around? But then they show you the full bill of the whole procedure and the stay in the hospital stuff. Well, you're only paying a fraction. I mean, the whole thing was like $120,000. $120,000. I stayed 6 days in the hospital, and there was an anesthesiologist, and there was a surgeon. Where's that money going? Like, what in the world? Like, you weren't feeding me. I was not eating.
Yeah.
You got me on the IV. You know, I mean, that's always my thought. Like, where is $120,000? Who is getting that?
It's going to the healthcare company.
It must be.
The middleman.
It must be. Because
I
I'm
mean,
like, those nurses are not making, you know, are they making $300 an hour or something?
No.
I mean, what's the deal?
I mean, they're getting paid a lot better
Right.
than they used to be.
Right.
And, I mean, a travel nurse, I've heard a lot of them make six figures, but they got travel
Sure.
and sacrifice, so it's the same situation.
Right, and they never
They
see
have
their families
kids.
either. Yeah.
They're never going to see their family.
Right, right.
But to your point on the healthcare system, if you have like our situation where it comes out of my paycheck before I even get the net pay or the
Right.
gross pay.
Right.
So I'm paying, I think, pre-tax like $400 each paycheck.
Right.
Or $300, so that's like $600 to
Yeah.
$800 a month.
Which is a lot.
That's a lot.
Right.
And I don't go to the
Exactly.
I don't do any of those things.
Probably only in an emergency situation.
Yeah.
And then you're still going to have to pay.
Well, I'm scared
Yeah.
to go
Right.
to a healthcare facility, whether even a dentist.
Right.
Because I know like if I have
Yeah.
something that's going on with my teeth,
Yeah.
well, even though we do need teeth cleanings, I'm like,
Yeah.
this is going to be a big bill. And this is going to affect my month.
Right.
Or the rest of the year.
Right.
But to your point, like, where is that money going? It's going to the middleman because we pay for healthcare, and the government gives it to the middleman, which is so. For instance, Kaiser Permanente or Blue Anthem.
Yep.
Blue Anthem then takes a majority of that money, and I think it's as high as 80 to 90% of their revenue is through the taxpayer.
Yeah.
And after, too often, like you're saying, that copay is still a lot of money that we owe to them. And you're just like, how did I just double dip and get screwed twice?
Right. Yes.
And I can't even blame the doctors because, to your point, the anesthesiologist, yes, there's a lot of those guys in the Los Angeles area, Texas, Tennessee, New York. They're making a lot of money. But they're also saving people's lives and doing things that only a very, very few specialized group can do. I've heard there's a lot of anesthesiologists and heart surgeons that make $400,000 or $500,000 a year.
Right.
But I mean, after taxes, you're not making $400,000 or $500,000 a year.
No.
And they went to school for not only 12 years,
Yes.
which I guess that's just your general education. You then had to become specialized.
Yes.
And do a residency for
Yes.
6-7 years.
And all those student loans and stuff. And I'm fine with those people getting a lot of money. Like, I think if you're a brain surgeon, you know what? You should make more money than almost anybody else. Because you went to all that school, and you're a brain surgeon.
Yeah.
Right? That's a big deal. Like,
yeah.
every day, your job is you have someone's life in your own hands. You make one mistake, that guy's dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Or you can affect their cognitive ability
Or
to
what?
even
Yes.
live.
Yes. Exactly. Those guys should make money. And if it said in the itemization, it was like, okay, this whole surgery and all this stuff, $120,000, and the surgeon got $50,000 of it, and the anesthesiologist got $30,000 of it, I'd be like, okay. But it wasn't that.
Yeah.
It was like the surgeon got like $4,000, and the anesthesiologist got $2,000, and I'm like, okay, where's the rest of this money going? To the hospital? But you're right, it's probably going to the insurance stuff.
The healthcare system.
And it's like, man, that's where it's just a mess.
And
dude.
you brought it up too. You said, well, they have to take out a bunch of student loans. That's almost triple dipping now because the student loan system and providers is also a middleman. So we're paying student loan servicers, if you go to school, I should say, to service your loan. So we pay the government taxes. We don't necessarily know where those taxes go, even though they're supposed to go to roads.
Right.
It's supposed to go to all these things that make infrastructure and society better.
Yeah.
But one of them that they say is it goes to education. So when we pay taxes, the government then allocates that money, and they say, here, student loan service providers, there's a new generation coming. They want to go to a 4-year.
Yeah.
We're going to give you the best interest rate, or we're going to guarantee you this money. We need you to service these loans and give good interest rates to the young people. Okay, well, that's all fine and dandy in theory, but then you have a lot of kids, even people my age, that they're going to be in student loan debt for the next 30 years.
Right.
Like if it's a mortgage.
Yep.
And it compounds.
Yeah.
And what sucks is we're subsidizing that. The taxpayer is actually subsidizing your own kids' debt.
Yeah.
and them being in that. It's the same thing with the healthcare system.
Right.
The middleman is a student loan service provider, the servicer as they call it. The same way on the healthcare system, Blue Anthem or Kaiser Permanente is the middleman. And yet, I then pay in the student loans, if I still had some. Luckily, I got to able to pay mine off already.
Right.
You pay them that interest rate, and that's where they're making their money on top of the principal.
Yeah.
But I'm already paying taxes as a contributing person and man to society.
Right.
Where in California, because of the high taxes and my federal tax rate, I'm already sending $20,000 of my dollars to the government throughout the year, where I'm basically working for free 4 months out of the year.
Yeah.
That's where I have the biggest problem with the system, with healthcare and anything like that.
Yeah. So, all right, man, we got about 40 minutes. So let's jump in to some spiritual stuff. So let's just start with telling me about your spiritual beliefs or lack thereof. Do you believe in God, not believe in God?
Yeah, so I definitely believe in God.
Okay.
But am I a practicing... I'm Roman Catholic.
Okay.
I'm confirmed through the church. But am I practicing?
Okay.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I do not go to church every Sunday. Though I believe I'm spiritual. I like to think that I talk to God and pray. And I like to think that He's talking back and or giving me messages through past loved ones.
Okay.
Okay. It's interesting because I'm so much younger than a lot of people I talk to, like about spirituality, and to some it could be offensive. Particularly my grandfather, because he's very religious.
Okay.
He goes to church every Sunday.
And he's offended that you don't go to church every Sunday, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know he is because he's talked to me about it. Like, hey, like why don't you? Like, what's your reasoning?
Right.
And I guess my reasoning truly is that I don't subscribe to a lot of the things that the church teaches that I feel was not what God actually taught. I think it was more of a construct of man, more than God, or Jesus.
Do you have an example of that you can think of off the top of your head?
Not particularly with that.
Okay.
But I guess this is more going or deriving from why I don't like a lot of the things the Roman Catholic Church does anymore. So the whole passing around of the basket,
the collection plate,
okay, and how then they just siphon or cycle that through, and it's tax exempt, and I guess it's a structural issue for me.
It's like a business,
It's like a business, and then I as you get older, you start to realize that you're just like, like I get the sense of community and that you need this money to keep the lights on, for the wine that they use, for the holy bread that they use, for property taxes. But even then, they get special exemptions. And then the whole issue that was going on with priests with the Roman Catholics was
like the molestation.
The molestation. Kind of stuff, I'm just like, gosh, that's just so dark and bad that it's hard for me to go to a church or think of something so holy, and yet man corrupted this institution that I truly believe did have good intent and a good way of teaching us at a young age to have good moral compass, to be spiritual and loving of thy neighbor. But
that would be a good example of what you were just talking about, right? Obviously, the Bible doesn't say that priests are supposed to molest little boys. Nor did Jesus ever teach that you're supposed to molest little boys. So this is an example of men that claim to be followers of Christ, claim to be followers of Scripture, yet what they're doing in their actions are total opposite, right? Yeah, because I mean, obviously there's plenty of scriptures that would condemn that kind of action. Not just doesn't say to do it, like there's the ones that would say not to do that kind of thing, you know what I mean? So,
and I was going to tell you, I don't want to be a hypocrite because I drink, I've smoked, I no longer smoke. I gamble, which I don't necessarily know if the Bible says anything about gambling.
I don't think so, personally. I mean, it'd be good stewards of your money is what the Bible says. So, I mean, if you're addicted to gambling and instead of putting food on the table for your children, you're gambling your money away, I would say, yeah, that's probably
and that makes sense, right?
That's not good.
That's not putting your family first, or if you're married, your spouse first.
Yeah, but if you have a $20 bet with somebody on the Super Bowl or something, and whether you lose or win that $20, it's not going to make that big a deal, I don't think that's against God in any way.
And that's the thing, right? Yeah. So, I'm a sinner, you know?
Sure.
I cuss. I use the Lord's name in vain.
Sure.
I did it yesterday. But should I subscribe to that I shouldn't get better or that's okay? no, I should get better and not say like, oh, just because I know in my mind or heart or soul he's going to forgive me.
Sure.
Well, I got to make it better though. I can't just say he's going to forgive me.
Right.
And that's it.
You can't be nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
But so when you do that, let's use that example. You take the Lord's name in vain. Do you instantly feel convicted? Like, do you feel regret for that?
I feel regret.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's the part where I got to like siphon that out of me. And I'm not trying to sound radical when I say that.
Right.
I'm just saying I've used it almost like as a crutch,
Yeah.
a word, instead of saying like an F word.
Yeah.
Or something that's even more vulgar than that.
Sure.
Which I don't really know what could be.
Right.
Nor do I want to diverge into what would be.
Well, let's research that. No. Yeah.
I use that. I use that.
Sure.
And
like people use like Jesus Christ as a swear word. Like when they get angry or they say, and it's always like, what do you do? Like,
Exactly.
I mean, but from a non-religious standpoint, who cares? Really? Like if I'm an atheist, I mean, I guess there's two ways to look at it. If I'm an atheist and I'm like, and I use that word, first of all, from the atheist standpoint, it's like, well, who cares? I don't even believe in Jesus. I don't believe in it. But then, like, I've heard Christians talking to somebody like that, and they're like, yeah, but then why are you even using it? Like, why have you ever thought about the fact that you're using the name of somebody you don't even believe exists as a swear word?
Yeah.
Like, do you find that interesting? And there's some pretty cool conversations that come out of that sometimes.
That is quite interesting,
because people don't really think about it, And I heard somebody say, in fact, I have an uncle, a great uncle, who was over here one time, I think for Thanksgiving or whatever, and my wife and I don't, we don't use the name of Jesus as a swear word or anything like that. Well, this uncle, who's not a believer, was over here, and he kept saying, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. I mean, it was always a constant. He was every 5 minutes you'd hear it come out of his mouth. And I finally had to call him on it and say, Uncle Mike, like, can you not, please? That's not something I want my kids repeating or hearing, or it's kind of offensive. And his whole thing was like, well, I don't mean anything by it. I mean, I don't mean like the Jesus. It's just a word I'm using. He kept saying I don't mean anything by it. And I'm like, well, that's just the point, right? You should mean something by it. If you're going to use the name of God, you should mean something by it. If you're just throwing it around nonchalantly like it's just some word, then that's it's blasphemous in a sense, right? You're misusing the name, but but back to the conviction. See, you tell me that you're convicted by that, like you feel a sense of regret when you say something like that.
I do.
That's good.
No.
Right? In my mind, that's good. It's the people that say that they believe in God and that they do all the things or whatever, and then they commit acts of sin or they do certain things, and I say, well, how do you feel when you do that? Do you feel convicted? No. I mean, Jesus is my homeboy. I mean, he's totally fine with my lifestyle. He forgives me, and I'm like, yeah, he does forgive you, but you should still feel bad about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and that's where that whole nonchalant.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That whole idea, like, you just do whatever you want, and just with the knowledge that Jesus will forgive you, which of course is true. I mean, I don't think there's really any sin that he won't forgive, but. Are you truly repentant of that sin if you just keep on doing it and not caring? I just don't care. I just whatever. It's like,
and I also look at it a way, and I don't know if this is where like an atheist or someone that's just not religious or sort of, or maybe not religious or spiritual would say like, well, Luis, like, so if you do feel regretful, why do you continue doing it? And it's like, I don't know. Like, I'm a human. Like
yes.
but I do say to myself, I want to get better about it.
Yeah.
Because I want to be a good example when I have kids.
Yes.
And I want to give them good morals and principles.
Right. Well, and that's why I'm emphasizing it's not just that a person keeps doing it, but they keep doing it and they're convicted every time. I'm talking about the people that don't have that. Like, not what you just described about yourself. People that are just like, yeah, I do that, so what? I'm going to do it again, so what? It's that attitude that makes me question whether or not their belief is genuine, because we all make mistakes. We all mess up. We all sin every day. I mean, I do things all the time that I'm like, but before I became a Christian, it was like I do all this stuff, and there was never an, it was always like, whatever. Yeah, cool, awesome. I had a relationship with God in from my perspective before I was a Christian, and he was great, man. He was fine with whatever I was doing, whatever my flesh wanted to do. God was right there, totally okay with it, right? This is the God I made up in my own mind, you know. And then when I started believing in the God of the Bible, I was like, ooh, wait a minute, this is different than the God I've been believing in my whole life. Like this is totally different. Like, this God has rules and he has things that are called sins, and like, oh, I'm not supposed to do that, or I'm not supposed to engage in that kind of thing. It doesn't mean I immediately stop doing all that. No, it doesn't. But now I have conviction over it. Now I feel remorse. I feel, So I mean, yeah. So when you have kids, do you think are you gonna kind of pass that on to them, like the Catholic belief, or?
Yeah, and I've had this conversation, ironically, with my boss a lot.
Okay.
Because he actually is an atheist.
Okay.
Though he was also raised Roman Catholic, and he told me that he just had a kid last year. He's gonna take his daughter to church, let her choose what she wants to do as she gets older.
Okay.
But his reasoning for taking her is not because he was raised. Well, of course, it has an effect that he was raised Roman Catholic, and that's why he chose to go to that specific church. But he said, from a moral compass standpoint, from a spirituality standpoint, that's why he's going to take his kids to church. I'm kind of torn between. And Camille, I talk about these things with her.
Well, you should.
Yeah.
If you guys are going to raise kids someday, it's an important question.
And but I find it funny because like, A, we don't know when that's going to be, and B, if it truly is when I think it's going to happen, it's still quite a ways away. But to your point, like you said, we should, because
it's a big deal.
If your partner doesn't agree with you on fundamental issues, that's going to be an issue in the marriage,
right?
For sure.
Yes.
Because if you that happens with friends sometimes, you lose friends with it when you have fundamental issues,
right?
That just don't coincide with your beliefs or lack thereof,
right?
So she's on the same page as me. She's like, I don't really want to get married through a church. I don't really want to go to church.
Right.
It's like, but maybe we can take them there, and this could be like showing them like punctuality, like somewhere that it's a sense of community.
Yeah.
Albeit the overarching thing that I think of that I just described to you earlier was like, but when there's things in the shadows that are going on, which I guess happens in society every day, right?
Sure.
With the government,
Yeah.
At your own employer, there might be shady stuff going on.
Yep.
With the city. So I don't know. I guess like I want to be optimistic and still do that, but then there's just still those things in the back of my mind,
right?
Because that's not God's work. That's man and whatever their intentions are.
Yeah, and that's why I always have a problem, whether it's Catholic, Protestant, really anything, even if it's a religious system I don't agree with. When they take the actions of men and they say, see, that's what this religion is. And I'm like, no, it's not. Those men are acting in contrary to that religion, right? Like the priests that are molesting little boys. That's not... The Catholic religion does not teach that, right? Those men are going against the Catholic doctrines when they do something like that. So, yeah, it just bums me out. So, what are your thoughts, just in general, on like the Bible? Do you see that as something that's true, all the way true? Some of it's true. None of it?
I subscribe to the idea that it all occurred.
Okay.
Though,
like it's historically accurate.
That's the thing. It's like, did man edit it to make it seem that much more fairy tale unicorn-like?
Right.
And was it much more simpler? I also question that.
Sure. And you should.
Yeah.
You absolutely should.
I really, truly want to believe that all of it's 100% true, but I feel like I'd be naive to say that it was.
Right. So, okay. So for me, I went through exactly that. Like, I became a Christian when I was 24. And I was all excited about it at first because for me, it was like I hated Christianity. I hated all of it. And then I became a Christian. Well, so then I'm on this thing. Well, then people started hitting me with all these questions. Like critics would hit me with different things. You know, how do you know that what you have today is what was originally written? How do you know that what you're holding in your hands and you're reading is what God really said, or what Jesus really said? Did he really say that, or did man go through and change that? I mean, we're talking about a document that for the New Testament's over 2,000 years ago, the Old Testament's 6,000 years ago, 5,000. You know, that's a long time. So in theory, all the translations, all the copies, all this kind of stuff happening, it just seems natural that there would be changes taking place in there somewhere, right? Just by human nature. So that led me into like a 2-year quest, basically, to really examine what I believed and why, to really examine the Bible and say, okay, look, if I'm basing my entire belief on this book, I need to make sure that it's accurate. I need to make sure it's true. So through that, it was very edifying for me. I came out of that going, oh my gosh, like it's unbelievable, the evidence that points to this being accurate. Like, I mean, I got into the original languages, Greek of the New Testament, Hebrew of the Old Testament. You know, you look at how many of the copies do we have from the originals, how accurate are what we have today compared to those copies, because we have no copies of the originals, like none. But we have copies that are close to, and then the farther you go down the line, you would expect to see all these changes and differences, and there's not. I mean, there's little minor things here and there. I mean, to say it's exactly word for word, no, but like all the core doctrines are still intact, which can really only be done if there's a divine hand in it. Right, and that's my view, is that God has preserved his word for all these years, because even when man's tried, because there's been plenty of times where man has decided, like Nero or some of these other emperors that came through and said, oh, we're going to get rid of all the Bibles, we're going to burn all the Bibles. They have these big burnings and all this stuff. They weren't able to get rid of all the Bibles.
Nazi Germany did the same thing.
Exactly,
and
right?
That's not thousands of years ago.
No, that was pretty recent,
100
right?
years ago.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, man has been trying to do that for a long time, right? And I think that without divine intervention, I think he would have been able to do it. But I think, for me, the reason why the scripture is so important is because I have to test everything by... First, I have to determine whether it's true. Once I've established that it's true and dependable, now I need to test everything that comes into my life by it, especially with religious beliefs. Like if I have an experience with God, right? Like God appears to me in a dream, and he says, Ryan, I need you to do this, or I want you to believe this, or whatever. And I go to the scripture, and the scripture says something opposite of that. What he's telling me is true. I'm going to go with scripture. There's a lot of people that wouldn't. There's a lot of people that would be like, oh no, I had this experience. I'm like, yeah, but how do you know your experience wasn't demonic?
Kind of like the story of Abraham.
Yeah.
You know?
Which part? The
killing
his own son. Yeah.
So we were testing him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hardcore, man.
That's hardcore, right?
Because I think to myself, if God appeared to me and said, Ryan, I want you to kill your firstborn son.
You just be like, this isn't God talking.
Right. That's probably what I would think. Yes.
This is demonic.
It's got to be. I'd probably check myself into the padded room and, get set up in there,
Yeah,
you know?
I probably would too.
Yeah, because that's crazy. But, but then he goes to do it out of obedience, and what happens? God says, stop. I see now that you're faithful. Leave Isaac alone. It's like, okay, Lord, we could have done this a different way. You didn't have to go to this extreme, but, and there's a lot of hard stuff in the Bible that's like, man, that's heavy,
Yeah.
But, so I mean, so I'm only telling you that because I used to be in that exact place, and there's a lot of people that would tell you, no, don't question it. Just believe what the priests tell you. Just believe what the religion I say no, go for it. Look into it, because I'm confident that you're going to come out on the other side of that more confident in the Bible than you ever were before.
Yeah, and I guess like to be more specific, as you were describing that, I was like following your story, your logic with that. I agreed with everything, but then I said, well, what is it specifically? Because you did probe that question, like what specifically? What do you say? Like, oh, like this is what makes me question. Besides what I said, like the structural, that man, kind of poisoned the system in a way, at least for Roman Catholics.
Yep.
The one thing that is hard for me to explain to others when they question me. So, like, if I'm talking to an atheist and they're like, "Well, why are you like so spiritual?" If you're like, they're kind of saying like, "You're halfway in, halfway out.
Right.
You got a foot in, but you got a foot out."
Yes.
And I'm just like, well, and I go back to that whole point. Well, I'd be naive not to question it. So, like to their point, but specifically like the great, as the Roman Catholics call it, the great mysteries or the supernatural events that occurred.
Yep. Miracles.
I question it a lot, and then even my own, like my brother asked me, like, "Oh, well, how could you subscribe to that occurred?"
Right.
And I didn't have an answer for that for the longest time. But then when I witnessed what I thought was a miracle in my life, I'm like, there has to be something more to this than just man or luck of the draw.
Yeah.
And
well, let's hear that. Can I hear that story?
It's not really like a uplifting story, but it happened to my life. It happened in my life.
Sure.
It was 4th of July back in 2017, I believe. Me, my brother, and my grandpa went in his Jeep to Oceano and Pismo Beach to the dunes.
Yeah, to watch the fireworks.
Well, I guess I guess so. Like he just wanted to go off roading and take us.
Oh, okay.
Like, we worked for him. I worked for my grandfather for a long time. He has a family business. It's landscaping.
Okay. Noah does that too. He was telling me that. Okay.
He's been doing it for 30 years now, or close to 30 years in the 5 cities area. So he asked us, like, still in our work clothes, like, hey, like, you guys want to go out and take the Jeep to the dunes? Like, you know, like, so I guess it was the 3rd of July. And it was going into the 4th of July because we didn't have work the next day.
Okay.
So I'm like, Grandpa, let's do that. Like, we don't have work tomorrow. So we hop in. We're on our work clothes. The top's off. He doesn't even have the bikini top on. And we go. We have fun. It was great. We saw the sunset, or the sun's going down, so we're watching the sunset. We come back, and there's this like box truck following us, really closely behind. And I start to notice it, and my grandpa's the driver. He starts to notice it.
This is on the roads, or are you still out on the dunes?
No, we're on the road now.
Okay.
So we're heading back to Guadalupe.
Okay.
So I guess I should have set the stage a little better.
No.
We came from, so we worked in the 5 cities.
Right.
We went to Guadalupe to return to his home, to leave everything there.
Okay.
Retrieve the Jeep and take it out to the dunes.
Okay.
And then we're coming back, and we're on Highway 1.
Gotcha.
Near where that fire, the Santa Barbara County fire station's at, right there, like near the dunes, and I think it's ConocoPhillips with the oil.
Yep.
So it's like that specific turn right there.
Okay.
So there's this box truck following us, and my grandfather says, well, I better just pull over because like this guy's just like following too close. Like, it's just better to pull over because this guy's probably like just mad that I'm going slow or whatever. That's the kind of guy my grandpa is. He doesn't really look for conflict.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, like, he pulls over. The truck pulls over with us.
Ooh.
And my grandpa starts looking at the guy like, do I know this guy? Like, maybe like it's just someone I know, because he's that kind of guy too. Like, he's like, well, I know a lot of people, so maybe this guy just wants to talk to me and recognize me.
I think I would have been scared at that point.
Yeah.
Me.
And my grandpa looks. We all look. Like I said, this is the Jeep that doesn't have the top on, so it's just the roll cage.
Yeah.
And he didn't know who he was. He's just a younger gentleman.
Did he get out of the truck and start coming out?
So then he comes out, and my grandpa just books it. He hits the gas. He's like, he knows to not stay in that situation.
Oh, he took off. Okay.
And that Jeep, I mean, it doesn't have a lot of power, to be quite honest with you, even though it was like a earlier 2000s Jeep. Yeah. It's not like from the 80s or the 60s or whatever.
Right.
The guy follows us. And then
he was out of his car, got back in,
follows us on Highway 1.
Was he by himself? Was it one person?
He was by himself. By himself in a box truck.
Huh.
He then starts tailgating my grandfather and us. And my grandpa is like, now, like, all right, like, I'm going to apply speed in this situation. Because, like I said, I mean, to me, my grandpa's the same. Like, he really is.
Right.
He's an honorable man, a good man, works for everything he has.
Yeah.
I love everything about my grandfather. I respect him. And, but I've never seen him do that. You know, he's like, I'm going to speed purposely.
Right.
Because the situation called for it. And, you know, right there, it's 55. So he's already going 70 at this point. Wow. Guy's still getting super close to the bumper. My grandpa doesn't know what to do. He's like, if I pull over, this guy's going to ram me. Yeah. If I take it somewhere else where it's heavily populated, it's going to make it worse for everyone. Right. Like, he's probably going to ram into us, and then we're going to ram into other people. Yeah. So he's continuing on, and he's going back home now. We're trying to get back home. And he tells me, like, hey, like, call the police. Like, tell them, like, what's going on.
That's what I was going to say. That's what I would do. I'd keep driving, but I would call the cops and say, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what's happening. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm in the passenger side. Like I said, I didn't preface this as well. I'm in the passenger side. My brother's in the back. Okay. It's like a bench in the back. Okay. But there's no protection. Like, there's no roll cage right there. It's just to the sides. And really for my grandpa and me. So, like, the driver and the passenger. Right. And I call the operator, and the operator's just like, because I'm freaking out. Like, I think anyone really, like, even if you're a composed person generally,
I'd be freaking
would be
out.
like, what's going on? Right. And he's continuing to apply speed, and the operator's like, what's going on? I'm like, this guy's like road raging against us for some reason. Like, I don't know why. And then he's like, they're questioning me on the phone while this event's going on. Like, well, did your grandpa do something to like offend this person? Like, did he cut him off? Yeah. Like, no, like, it's just a bad luck of the draw that this is occurring right now. They're like, okay, like, where are you guys going? And I'm just like, the same way right now when you asked me earlier during this podcast, like, oh, like, what are your favorite songs? Like, you normally know that when you're just having a normal conversation. Maybe it's a little bit of anxiousness that, like, makes you go blank.
Mm-hmm.
I went blank. I'm just like, and I've lived here my whole life, as I've told you, and I'm just like, I'm heading, like, I couldn't, like, produce, like, northbound, eastbound, southbound.
Yeah.
I'm just, like, freaking out.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a young teenager at that point. I mean, I think I was like 19, which is an old teenager, really.
Right.
But eventually, like, the goal is we're gonna get to Guadalupe, and we're hoping that emergency services are gonna be there to provide assistance in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
The sun's going down, so it's getting dark, and my grandpa gradually went from going 70 miles an hour to 80 miles an hour to 90. Dang. So now he's
and
like,
this guy was still keeping up on your tail.
He was still like very close to hitting our bumper. Wow. So we are now, I don't know how long it's been since you've gone towards Guadalupe.
I go there often, actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I'd make deliveries out there all the time.
As you know, like, it's just like an agricultural town, and it's just fields before you get there.
Yep.
And there's trenches on the side. Mm-hmm. So even so I can't clearly communicate to the operator.
Right.
Like eastbound,
where you
southbound.
are, yeah.
I can't give him coordinates.
Right.
Nor did I think, like, I could go on my phone and give him coordinates. Mm-hmm. But I am thinking, if this guy hits us at this rate of speed and we flip over, there's a big possibility we're going to die right now.
Yeah. And
we're going to land in that trench.
Yep.
So that started freaking me out more as I was thinking that.
Right.
So the speedometer's hitting the limit. He's going about 120 now.
Dang, dude, that's nuts.
And now obviously there's a governor in every car, so I don't know if it truly was hitting a higher speed or if that was the limit. Like if it was going past 120.
Yeah.
But eventually we make it into town. My grandpa runs the stop sign going into town from that end, so that would be near like the Chevron in the corner.
Right.
So he ran that stop sign. And for whatever reason, like, my grandpa, like, went into YK Market, like, around, and he tries, like, hiding in neighborhoods. And now the operator has already connected me to the Guadalupe Police Department. They're like, where are you guys at? I'm like,
and you're, like, right there now.
Like, first I'm like, well, I'm on Guadalupe Street. Oh, now I'm on YK. Now I'm in this neighborhood.
Right.
Like, what did you guys, same thing, what did you guys do?
Right.
Like, we did not do anything.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Like, so eventually we end up near the train tracks where the elementary school's at. Mm-hmm. And the cops find us, and the guy is nowhere to be found. Like, we lost him for a bit.
Okay.
In town. And they're like, what's going on? Like, they all wave their hands, like, they have their lights on. And then, like, I yell out, like, watch out. And then, like, he's coming, and he tries to ram the police officer.
The guy in the truck?
Yeah. So, okay, so.
Wow,
I don't know how to word this, but I wanted to say I was happy that they got to see that he was so crazy that he would ram a police car.
Absolutely, yes.
But I'm not actually happy about that because I don't want harm on the police officer.
No, right.
But if they didn't see that, maybe they wouldn't believe that what was occurring was really occurring.
Yep.
Then they started chasing him. He rams into a wall in an apartment complex. Mm-hmm. They draw their guns. They get him. And all of us, like, it's dark now. It's pitch black. July 3rd. It's probably like, I don't know. I don't remember what time the sun goes down in the summer, but it's probably like 7:30 now. 8.
Yeah, it's late in July. Yeah, for sure.
And we're all just, like, shaking up. Like, super high. The adrenaline's wearing off. There was adrenaline going on.
Oh, yeah.
And I've never seen my grandpa that shaky before. Mm-hmm. And we're all just, like, crying. Like, tears rolling down our face. We're just like,
quite an ordeal to go through.
Why did this happen? And I'm just like, we could have died right now. Yeah. Especially when we're hitting 120, zooming through that.
Right.
And I guess I bring up this story and say all this and try to interrelate back to miracles.
Yeah.
When we start calming down and talking about it, we realize something that I can't explain to this very day. There wasn't one car in front of us the whole way through.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that crazy?
And that was a 20-minute drive from where we were at.
Yeah.
And I tell myself, I'm like, who was watching over me that day?
Right.
Or what was watching over me that day?
Yeah.
Because that's a miracle. Because, like, if there would have been one car, we would have had to either pass it or hit it.
Yeah.
And passing at that rate of speed.
Oh, yeah. What a roll.
It's unexplainable to me.
Yeah.
But it turned out the guy was like on drugs. He was like out of it.
Okay.
The cops arrested him, and my grandpa was really just worried. Like they asked him, like, "You want to press charges?" Like, because he tapped the bumper at a certain point, but not to a point where like you could tell like it caused damage.
Yeah.
And he's just like, no, like I'm not even concerned about pressing charges. Like I'm just concerned, does he know who I am and my grandsons?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to ever see this guy again.
Right.
And the police officer was very adamant. He's like, no, this guy's out of it. Like he's on some heavy drugs. Not like, and I consider heavy drugs to be something like cocaine as well.
Right.
But like, no, this guy's like on heroin or something even worse than that.
Yeah.
So all that to say, like,
yeah. So this is what's interesting. That's an amazing story, first of all. But like, there's miraculous elements there for sure. But you were talking about your brother.
Yeah.
And he's the one who's saying, how can you believe in this stuff? He was in the exact same car as you. He witnessed everything you did.
Yeah.
Yet he's coming away with a totally different viewpoint on miracles than you are.
Yeah,
That's
and
interesting.
I guess it's because he still subscribed or stuck to, well, like, how did Jesus or God walk on water?
Mm-hmm.
How did he separate the seas?
Right.
How did he create water or turn it into wine?
Sure.
It's like he's stuck on the story where I'm just like,
Right.
well, we witnessed his work.
Right.
If it wasn't him, maybe it was our
Right.
great grandpa up there telling him like, "Hey, they need help.
Right.
Can you help them? Like, please, like, I don't want them to go."
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and you still didn't get it.
yeah,
I mean, so I guess for me, like something like miracles, like even like water into wine, or any healing people. You hear Jesus, like someone who's born blind, they're blind for 50 years, and Jesus makes them so they can see. That isn't hard to believe as for me, as long as I mean, if I'm believing that Jesus is deity, like if he is literally God in the flesh. Why is it so hard to believe God? I mean, God can do whatever he wants. I mean, he created everything. He made us. He made the world. He made like, he can heal people, no problem, right? Like, if it's just some guy, if it's, my brother Johnny down the street, he just healed some guy of cancer or something. It's like, then I'd be like, dude, like, that might be hard to believe, right? Because that's just some human, right? But it's like, Jesus wasn't just a human, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I guess what I'm saying is like the aspect of him being able to do it isn't so much hard to believe, but it's a different thing, I guess, if someone's saying, well, I'm not sure I believe it really happened, right? Like we have that historical recording of it happening, like in the Gospels. You read Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, and you have these instances where Jesus did these amazing, miraculous things. Now, I could understand someone questioning, saying, yeah, but did that really happen, or did somebody just write that down because they wanted Jesus to look like God?
Supernatural.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're trying to convince the public that Jesus was God in the flesh, so we better make up some stories about how he did these amazing, miraculous things and write them down, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would understand that critique more so, I mean, but again, I think even if you look into that and that kind of thing, it becomes pretty clear that he really did do all these things, because there's people that were witnesses to that. Like, you can find historical books, not the Bible, but outer Bible historical books, where these miracles are described by non-believers. And a non-believer has no reason to corroborate a story like that about, they might even say, oh no, I don't even believe in God, I'm an atheist, but here's what I saw, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, there's validity there to me, because if it's a Christian saying it, I'm like, oh, well, you're just saying that because you're trying to pump up your head honcho man there, but it's like, why would an atheist, if anything, an atheist would want the opposite to be true, because if Jesus is performing miracles, that gives them maybe a reason to believe in him,
I find that interesting too, because you were saying in her historical context,
right.
There were non-believers that recorded these things, because even to a non-believer, like this is supernatural.
Yeah.
This is
above
what man can comprehend.
Right. Yes.
And that's why then I generally then try to have both feet in, albeit again the whole structure standpoint of like the physical place to me is where I still get stuck.
Right.
But in terms of what you're describing, that's what pushed me over the edge to start believing. And it's unfortunate that it has to happen to you to believe.
Sure.
Because like my grandfather also taught me like, hey, I'd rather you learn from my mistake and other people's mistakes than you having to go through it and make it.
Right.
And I'm just like, maybe that's the man in me.
Right.
Man literally as a man, but like mankind does that.
Yes.
We want to go through with it anyways.
Yeah.
Regardless of what people tells us.
Well, sometimes that's the only way you're going to learn.
Yeah.
Like you can learn, like people can teach you with their words, even by personal example. And say, "Oh, I went through this, and I don't want." I mean, I see it with my kids all the time. I tell them what I went through because I don't want them to have to learn the hard way like I did. But they still do it.
Yeah.
Because to them, it's not a reality, right? That, oh, Dad's just talking about whatever. I mean, things are different today, Dad. That's not the same thing or whatever. And then they go through it, and they're miserable. It's like, what happened?
Yeah.
I told you not to do that. I know, but, you know, it was different. No, it's the same thing. Like, you have to learn the hard way, too, sometimes, you know? And if that's the only way you're going to learn, then I'd rather have you learn that way, you know?
To your point, we have that as well with God, with the commandments.
Yeah.
And there are repercussions for not following those commandments.
Yes.
And
right.
once you figure it out, the repercussions, you're like, probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And I learned. So people can never learn because I don't want to say it's too late, but I mean, if what they're doing is so erratic to where they die, then you're dead. You can't learn once you're dead.
Too late at that point.
But if you're living and you have the option to, that's to your point. Like you as a dad,
right?
Telling them like, hey, like I'm not trying to be like a dictator or authoritative.
Yeah.
Although I am your father.
Yeah.
Like listen to me from being young once.
Right.
Like I did this. Or even worse than what you think that is bad for you, or not bad, or they don't have a preconceived notion yet of what that thing is.
Right.
But I'm telling you, if you do this, like, it could end up badly for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Or worse.
But they almost don't care sometimes. They don't believe it. So the person saying that has been through it. So they have the experience, right? Like even if, like, say, if I could go back in time to 17-year-old me or something and tell that person, hey, don't do what you're going to do when you're 18. This thing's going to come up. You're going to get invited to this whatever, this party or whatever. Don't do it. Right? Now, that 17-year-old me is still going to go to that party when he's 18.
Yeah.
Right? Because the thing is that 18-year-old does not have the knowledge that the 45-year-old me has right now. It just doesn't have it. The only reason I have that knowledge now is because I went through those situations and I gained the knowledge. I gained the experience and the understanding, you know. So what about like heaven and hell? Do you believe in a heaven and a hell, like literal places?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
And what do you think, like, as far as like I know you grew up Catholic, so I assume you hold the Catholic view on this, but like, where do you think, who ends up in heaven and who ends up in hell, from your perspective?
And I like that you asked that question because something that I've derived from Roman Catholicism, that if you told a priest or a nun, I'm sure they would think it's blasphemous. But I think that this is purgatory.
Okay.
Earth, this is our test.
Okay.
This is our test where we're showing God, like, do we deserve to be in the eternal kingdom and glory with Him? Like, how you treat people and what you do here, is the big test in life. Okay. And
I like that idea better than the Catholic idea of purgatory after death.
Yeah, I do too.
That makes more sense to me.
Because why would it be that, oh, like, you kind of were good, but you still did bad, so I'm going to keep you here for, I mean, maybe time isn't a real thing. Right. Maybe it's really a figment of our imagination.
Well, it's we're within the time frame
here
place, right? So once we get out of it, that's why if you get in a spaceship and you fly away from Earth, time slows down because you're eventually going to be outside of time, and I think that's where God exists. So to God, there's no time, but to us, there definitely is time, right?
But to go off of what you just said, as a human, let's just say, like, God tells you you're going to stay in purgatory for another 7 years. Like, I need you to grow still. Like, so yeah, I'm with you. Like, why would that be a thing? Right. I feel like this is the thing. Yeah. This is the test. Sure. And then you probe the question, so who deserves to be up there and down there if you believe that sort of thing? Right. I don't have the answer. Okay. But what I believe personally is that as long as you're a person that grows and doesn't commit the atrocious sins, when I say atrocious, murder, rape, or anything that's derived or goes into that context,
loitering,
we all have that opportunity. Yeah, lottery, you know? A Jehovah's Witness knocking on my door and telling me to get off my lawn.
Yeah.
No.
So to you, there's like cardinal, what I think Catholic Church would call cardinal sins, which are like things like murder, rape, these kind of things, to where things like lying or things are more minor. Those don't keep you out of heaven.
No, and I think that's logical too. But then again, maybe to God, like our logic isn't logical. I don't know.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
If anyone in this world knew what would happen after, that would be really cool. But we don't, and we're not going to know until it's over.
Yeah, I guess that's true. As far as we won't know for sure.
No.
But if we believe, I mean, the Bible tells us what it's going to be like. Like the Bible describes heaven and hell. And this is what I was kind of getting to, is that this is the one thing that I always bring up, because it's the thing that I hated about Christianity before I became a Christian, and a lot of people have a hard time with it, is that when Jesus says in the scripture, it's recorded that he says that he's the only way. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. So if someone comes to me and says, hey, I'm a Hindu, or I'm a Buddhist, and all roads lead to heaven, I say, well, do you believe in Jesus? Have you received Jesus as your Savior? They say, well, no, I don't believe in Jesus. But I'm a wonderful person. I've done great things. I've built orphanages, and I've helped, all this kind of stuff. According to Jesus, those people are going to be in hell.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Because from our human perspective, like you and I just were talking about, we think of people like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, all these rapists and serial killers. They'll be in hell, to where people like Mother Teresa and Gandhi, these are the guys that'll be in heaven because they're good people. They've done good things, But that's kind of like a not biblical perspective, right? And that falls in both Catholic side and the Protestant side, because that's in both Bibles, right?
That's true.
I mean, most of the Catholic Bible is, the Protestant Bible is the same. The Catholic Bible has the Apocrypha, which is things that they hold. There are a couple books like Wisdom and Esdras and that kind of stuff that's in that book. That's their translation. That's not in the Protestant translation, but most of it's the same.
That's true, because you could get to the subtopic too, or continue off of that train of thought and logic, like you're saying. Well, what about people that go to war? What about our military? Yeah. It's like, I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, that's hard.
I hope and pray to God that those people do go, but at the same time, I don't know, because at the end of the day, it is our free will saying, like, we want to join the military, right? Yeah. I mean, unless you were drafted during World War II. Right. Nowadays, it's free. It's always been free will. I mean, I guess you could have gone AWOL or been in a conscientious objector as well. Sure. Which there were conscientious objectors.
Yeah, but that's a hard choice, right? Because now you're on the run, and you got to worry about, what if you have a family and stuff? You got to worry about them. Yeah, that's a tough choice. But yeah, ultimately, it's free choice. Like you're even though you're being forced to make one of those two decisions, it's like you still can make the decision. Yeah, that's a rough one too.
But I don't have that answer, because I mean, I have a lot of family members that have gone to war or are part of the military.
Sure.
And I know at least of one uncle that's directly told me, like, hey, like, I was a staff sergeant in the Marines after 12 years or close to 12 years. I killed people. And he's gone even further than that. And it's, to be completely raw and honest, like on the mic, like he's told me he's killed kids.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know, though, what God will say about that. Because he was in Afghanistan, and he had orders from this country, and for whatever... It's very complex. Yeah. It really is.
For sure.
Because like on the surface level, like to me, that's very dark. Yeah. Very, very dark.
But once you sign the paper and you're property of the United States military, you got to do what they tell you to do.
Follow orders,
right? Which is difficult, because what if they ask you to do something that's morally wrong? Yeah. From your own perspective, what if they said, "Oh, I need you to go rape those women over there. I need you to go kill those kids over there."
That's the thing. Like, do you use your moral compass to then say, "No, I won't"? Right. But then I'm risking getting thrown in a military prison. Yeah. For my whole life, where I won't be able to come back to my wife or kids. Right. And the whole thing, like, it reminds me of like the Chris Kyle situation on American Sniper. It was the same situation with my uncle. He didn't just kill a man or a woman or a kid because they had different beliefs and they were from a different country. Right. They had weapons and they were shooting at him.
Sure, it was self-defense.
So you have to defend yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Same thing on the American Sniper scene. I'll never forget that scene because of my uncle, Chris Kyle, which was played by Bradley Cooper. He had to make a judgment call. Like, there was a kid pointing an RPG, a rocket propelled grenade, at one of the convoys. Yeah. It's like, do I let that kid possibly get this convoy of my fellow comrades
Right.
and Americans?
Yeah.
Or do I make the judgment call and kill this kid?
You take the one life to save the many lives, right?
That, and it's a kid.
And it's a kid, right?
And you're going to have to answer to God for that.
Right.
The same way we're having this conversation right now across the table.
Yeah.
I would like to think you could have that conversation with God.
Yep.
I would also like to think that he already knows
Right.
why you did it.
Yeah.
But maybe he still wants you to explain yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, see, I believe that there's forgiveness for everything. I don't think there's, Jesus talks about an unforgivable sin, but it's not murder, it's not suicide, it's not rape, it's not any of those things that a lot of people would say is an unforgivable sin. He says it's called blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. And that's, to me, that's a long story. My point is, it's not a lot of the things that we say it is, you know. So I do think that somebody like Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, if they truly are repentant and they truly want forgiveness and they truly receive Christ as their Savior, they'll be in heaven someday. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with that. Like, I don't want, those guys shouldn't be in heaven. They did horrible things. It's like, yeah, but God forgave them. God shouldn't forgive them. It's like, who are you to tell God who he can forgive and who he can't forgive? You know what I mean? So,
yeah. I mean, we have no right? I guess like the younger version of me, if this was like a 14, 16-year-old sitting across you, I would have been like, oh, no, I would have been with that consensus that you just said. Like, oh, like there's no way. But who are we to question his will or power?
Yeah.
We don't truly know.
Yeah.
And I could subscribe to that logic because maybe their soul was just ripped apart and corrupted for some reason, some way.
Yeah.
The Lord said, you were redeemable because of this.
Yeah.
Or you allowed yourself to cleanse your soul after it was ripped apart.
Sure. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Cool, man. Well, we're at the end. You made it.
Yeah, man.
Congratulations.
It went through quicker than I thought, man.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are like, 3 hours? I don't have anything to say for 3 hours. You'd be surprised. Come on over.
No.
And then they get to the end like, oh, man, we're done already? Like, what? So, but yeah, thanks for coming, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Good stuff.
Nice meeting you. I know this, like you said, it's crazy that we had never met.
Right.
You didn't know what I looked like. I didn't know what you looked like. But
Right.
it's kind of cool, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
I greatly appreciate you giving this episode a listen. Do me a favor and help spread the word to those that you know. If you have any questions or comments for me, don't hesitate to reach out. My email is whycan'twetalkaboutthat@proton.me. Now here's a snippet from next week.
Years later, like Kristen was still having the missionaries and stuff come and visit and do some teachings here and there.
Okay.
She tried a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
Because I think she needed that. And then at one point, we were living in Northern California, and there was young kids, you know, because they're young missionaries and stuff, and came to the house, sat in my living room because I was entertaining the fact that, well, my wife wants this, I'm going to support her. Yep. If this is an aspect for her and it's therapeutic, cool.
Yeah.
And they said something that basically was to the effect of, you're living your life wrong, like you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was like, it's time for you guys to go. You're not going to sit in my house and tell me that I'm wrong as an 18-year-old kid that has no freaking life experience and no clue. And I've got 5 kids. I've been serving this country for over a decade. Like, no.
Right.
Like, you can tell me your viewpoints and how I can try to be more reflective of Heavenly Father and stuff, but you're not going to tell me that basically I'm wrong and I'm not living right. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that just rubbed me so raw at that moment that I was like, dude, I just need to go. And I wasn't rude. Sure. I said, I think it's time for y'all to go. I appreciate you coming by, but you know, like, we're not going to allow you guys to come by anymore. So you guys just take us off the roster or whatever. And I don't think to this day we've had any